Like, what would they have preferred have happened in the subway car that day? What would they have accepted? What was allowable in their minds? At what point would they want someone to step in? Maybe never? I don't know. I would love to hear them explain to me what that was. Now, you can feel terrible for somebody like Jordan Neely, who had a terrible upbringing, lost his mother, was homeless, was trying to make it as an impersonator, on a lot of drugs, arrested 42 times. You can feel bad for him. And you could say that even that the system failed him. But at some point, does the system have to protect others? Isn't that what the system of government is for? And I wish that they would have to explain that.
You know, Greg, people like Cori Bush, who voted against this resolution, don't want that to happen to them, which is why they call for defunding the police and use money to pay for private security. So it's fine when it happens to other people on the subway, but not to them.
Yeah, I would be okay with it if they hired security from the groups who hate cops. Right? Don't use retired police officers or present-day police officers. I'd like to see how it works out if criminals protect them and see how far that gets them. That female that was on, I can't remember her name, so I don't want to butcher it, on Laura's show. She's a victim because she doesn't have the same security that the squad has. That's why the squad can't. The squad throws women under the bus every day. Every day that they ignore women as victims, they're the worst misogynists on the planet. And it's a consequence, I think, of applying the political filter to things that never used to be political. And this is what happened when the left in the 70s decided that everything personal is now political. And so things that we used to battle together, like crime, went from one side to two. Never was like that. I mean, liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans, we all felt that, like, we wanted safe streets and we didn't want our kids beaten up and we didn't want people. But that has changed now because there's one side that looks at through the ideology of oppression versus oppressed. So the leftists now can't do the human thing and support people who are trying to help others because we feel the same way. You know, it's the prison of two ideas thing again. They can't be with the other side because that's politically evil. So they side with criminals. You know,
Jesse, we heard a lot during BLM, a lot about defunding the police, but also that people in these communities wanted police officers who looked like them, who were part of their community. And here we have Officer Preston, who was killed by teenagers in her hometown, and the squad is behaving like this.
Yeah, they're going to pay for this politically. You know, when you have those really wild votes in Congress, like a Barbara Lee, who'll be the only member to not vote for the Afghanistan invasion, or someone like, remember Ron Paul used to be the one sole vote against, like, the most popular thing ever? Those are usually principled votes that
those people
you get a lot of heat for. But I understand those types of votes. And those are brave votes. This is not a brave vote. This was one of those political things that McCarthy did to dare the squad to vote against it. Hey, everybody, let's just give a nice salute to the police. And they walked right into the trap. It's not like this was going to fund or defund the police. There was no policy here. This is going to be used against the Democrats so viciously. In the midterms, they're going to say the squad Democrats voted against saying attaboy to cops. And they just handed a huge political weapon to the right, and they just made Nancy and Hakeem go, oh my God, are you kidding me over here? All you had to do was fall in line and say, I like cops too. Is it that hard? But they tried to make a stand like it was on principle, but it was on politics, and they blew it.
Yeah, and it's hypocritical as well. Jessica?
Well, we've been saying the squad, but it was half the squad. I mean, this isn't even a unified front.
A squad.
They staunched the squad.
Stanched.
Stanched.
Stanched the squad.
Traunched.
Stop the bleeding, and I'll finish. And I thought that was telling, that AOC didn't vote with them, Ayanna Pressley didn't vote with them, Jamal Bowman didn't vote for them. These are people who are usually pretty unified about an issue. And I think that if you are going to take a, quote, principled stand, which I'm sure that they think that they did, we're owed a much more thorough explanation as to why you wouldn't stand up and salute this young woman who seems like an incredible person.
Well, they blame Republicans.
Well, but that's not a full explanation, because there are often, I'll credit Dana for this, sometimes we'll be talking about a bill and I'll say, I can't understand how Republicans voted against it. And you are detail-oriented and you say, well, this is why. Whether I agree with it or not, there's usually a decent reason that can be laid out, whether you agree with it or not. It doesn't seem to be the case here. And there were tons of elections that went on yesterday. And if you look at what happened in Philadelphia, there was a Democratic primary.
Yeah.
And the candidate, the tough on crime candidate, who talked a lot like Mayor Adams had been talking, who even said we may need to bring back stop and frisk, was the one who routed the more liberal candidate. And I think that you're going to continue to see this all across the country. We now have a Democratic mayor of Jacksonville also talking about how important it is to make sure that people aren't robbed, aren't murdered, aren't raped, etc. And that is going to be on the forefront of what goes on in 2024 and moving forward.
Yeah, well, cops are having a really hard time recruiting. This officer, Officer Preston, was only 24 years old. So we'll see how it goes.
She had just finished her master's degree, and she wasn't able to attain the opportunity to go and get her diploma, and her mom did it for her over the weekend.
Terrible. All right, up next, did Barack Obama just take a shot at conservative media?
Hi, I'm William Devane. Did you know there's only been 2 times in American history, 2, when the national debt was larger than gross domestic product? World War II and right now. That's a deep hole, and I don't know how we'll climb out of it. That's why I buy gold from Roslyn Capital. Roslyn Capital is a trusted leader in helping people acquire precious metals. Gold bullion, Lady Liberty gold and silver proofs, and premium coins can help you preserve your wealth. Call Roslyn Capital to receive your free Roslyn Guide to Gold, Gold and Precious Metals IRA, and Silver Brochure. With Roslyn, there are no gimmicks, no hassles, and they have fast, reliable shipping. Ask yourself, are you safe? Make gold your new standard.
Call Roslyn Capital today at 800-630-8900. 800-630-8900. That's 800-630-8900.
We know patients are more than their disease. That's why at Novo Nordisk, we've spent 100 years developing treatments to help unlock humanity's full potential. These are the greats. People living with, thriving with, not held back by, disease. They motivate us to fight diabetes and obesity, rare diseases, and cardiovascular conditions for generations to come. So everyone can meet their moment, because your disease doesn't define you. So what will?
For us, driving around is the only way we can get our baby to sleep. So when our windshield cracked, we can't drive this. We needed it fixed right. We went to safelight.com. There's no one else we'd trust. Their experts replaced our windshield and recalibrated our car's advanced safety system. They focus on our safety, so we can focus on this little guy.
Safelite Repair, Safelite Replace.
My name is Dr. Joseph Purita. Before I would ever give a product to a patient, I tried on myself. So I started taking Super Beets and I said, wow, Super Beets is doing a whole bunch of things at once. It helps dilate blood vessels. It helps increase my circulation. It's having a beneficial effect on my heart and my energy. It makes me healthier.
Inspired by the Nobel Prize-winning discovery of nitric oxide for its important role in regulating cardiovascular health, Super Beets superfoods make doing more to support your nitric oxide production simple. Superfoods like our Super Beets crystals or our heart chews with clinically studied grapeseed extract to help promote normal blood pressure nearly 2 times more effectively than a healthy lifestyle alone.
My mom always used to say, eat your beets, it's good for you. Boy, was she right.
See why we've earned over 50,000 5-star ratings and reviews. Visit superbeets.com and find out how you can get a 30-day supply absolutely free. Plus, free shipping with your first order. Use discount code FOXNEWS and get an extra 20% off. So act now.
Introducing Glass Office Chair Mats by Vitraza, the premium alternative to cracked, curled, and worn-out plastic mats. Super strong Vitraza glass chair mats are engineered to hold over 1,000 pounds and never dent. They're also protected with a nanotech coating, and they're beautiful. We give you a lifetime warranty and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. Order online and use promo code TV to get 10% off any glass chair mat at vitraza.com.
Your chain's off. We can fix it now, and you're done.
Done.
We fixed this toilet.
raging border crisis, soaring crime. President Obama being criticized after revealing that none of those issues are the ones that keep him up at night.
What about this country keeps you up at night?
The thing that I'm most worried about is the degree to which we now have a divided conversation, in part because we have a divided media. When I was coming up, you had 3 TV stations.
Yeah.
And people were getting a similar sense of what is true and what isn't, what was real and what was not. Today, what I'm most concerned about is the fact that because of the splintering of the media, we almost occupy different realities.
While President Obama worries about people living in different realities, the Washington Post announcing that it is standing by its Trump-Russia collusion investigation coverage, even after the Durham report blew a hole in the mainstream media's reporting. That is something else, Jesse. That is something else.
Yeah, I am standing by my birth certificate reporting as well.
Take it back.
I take it back. I do take it back. So Barack Obama has been whining about Fox for what now, 10 years? And he has 90% control of the media, but Fox keeps him up at night. Not all of the mass shootings in Chicago. Not Michelle, Fox. You know, the guy never wants to talk about policy. He never talks about policy. It's always PR with him. And he's so thin-skinned. And there has to be something really deeper than all of this. He's probably a little annoyed that Joe Biden's passing better legislation than he is. He's annoyed that Michelle is a fruit juice tycoon and has her own Netflix special and her book sold more copies. And he's looking for attention because you're asking the former president, this is a pretty important question. You're looking for a visionary response. This was not, in 100 years, we're talking about AI keeps me up, China. No. It's Jesse Waters prime time.
Yeah, polarization in America. That is like the pat answer.
I had no idea he was a white supremacist. He wants to go back to the days where you have 3 white TV anchors, right?
Men.
So it's really, it is kind of an interesting observation that among the left, racism has exploded as more and more diverse voices are all over the place. It's like you've seen minority majority rule basically in entertainment, and it's now worse than ever. What is wrong with a divided media? We have a divided government. It's the only way things can work is to have, now there is division, intense division, that's different than a divided media, right? People getting angry at each other, demonizing people. Generally the demonization started with the left because they were the ones who made it personal in the 70s, and now the right's catching up. But you need to have a divided media, because what else would you have? You would have the 3 white guys, and everything sucked in the 70s. The only good thing you could do is litter. And basically, I learned that was wrong, too, over time.
And you could smoke in all the restaurants.
You could smoke everywhere. And then you could go up to the drive-thru, you could order food, and then you would just throw everything out the window. We're crazy people back then. You don't want to go back there.
Katie, it was his staff that coined the phrase media echo chamber when Ben Rhodes, if you remember, did the story that said basically they were able to push any narrative they wanted to because the media that they were talking to would eat it up.
Specifically with the Iran nuclear deal. President Obama talks about how we have a divided media, that we live in different realities. That's a problem for him. We actually just have a fuller picture because we have more media. We have democratized media through alternative stations, through social media, through citizen journalists, and yet people like President Obama don't like that because it debunks a number of these narratives that they continue to try and push. Let's not forget that Barack Obama was the president who spied on reporters. He was tapping the phones of news executives. They were following the movements of reporters going in and out of federal government buildings. They prosecuted more sources under the Espionage Act than any other president in the history of the country. And you wonder if we were still doing this the 3 network thing, big scandals like Operation Fast and Furious, for example, wouldn't have been covered. Just think about all the things that don't get covered by certain outlets, but do get covered by others. And so we have a fuller story.
Well, it's interesting if you do think about the Hunter Biden laptop story, the mainstream media got dragged kicking and screaming to admitting that that story was real after a while.
It definitely took a while. It was, not that we're going to rehash everything from the illustrious Twitter files, but it was like 24 hours that the story was down when the New York Post put it up. But yeah, there are definitely some things where the media is late to the game on it, and there seems to be a wink and a nod agreement, like we're not talking about this, these are the things that are our priorities. And that's really what your media choice is about. You find something that reflects the things that you care about. So if you're a voter or you're just a person, maybe you're not even that political, that thinks that what's going on the border is absolutely the most important story, you're going to tune into, whether that's an influencer, that's someone who has a YouTube show, a podcast, a cable news network that is going to cover those stories because that's what resonates with you. We talk about this all the time, that candidates go out there and they talk about things that just don't mean anything to their audience, right? You show up in the wrong place. We were saying about the town hall last week, right? That Caitlin Collins wanted to talk about issues that might matter to CNN voters, but the Republican primary voters that were sitting there are saying, you know, actually, I'm not showing up because I want to talk about the Dobbs decision. I want to talk about illegal immigration, or I want to talk about slain police officers. Jesse, to your point, though, about President Obama being jealous of Joe Biden, the Affordable Care Act, which he got passed, is one of the most seminal pieces of legislation in America. Yeah, seminal.
You know what seminal means?
I do. Do you?
I don't think you know what it means.
I dare you to tell all of us what it means.
No, it's to write it off. I'm the one writing it off.
BFD.
Oh, wow. All right. Hey, up next, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle making a big claim about a near catastrophic car chase with the paparazzi. But the police say not so fast.
Loved family, and he loved being able to go home to Wyoming during the holidays. Him and I met in middle school. We grew up together, we were best friends. We did this thing when we were in middle school where we write a letter to ourselves. I remember reading the letter that Seth wrote to himself. He's like, I'm thinking the military, and sure enough, he stuck to it. If you were to meet Seth, you would know he was a patriot, and country came first. He loved flying the Ospreys. He loved being a Marine. So the 8th of June, it was any other day. He was off flying. He usually kept in touch with me, so it was about the time he would be coming home. I got concerned. Something gone wrong, and the plane went down. It took all their lives. It has been the worst nightmare from that day forward, trying to accept that it's reality now, that he's gone. My mom was like, hey, did you see this post? This organization, Tunnels to Towers, they're gonna buy you a home. And I was like, no, that's a scam. Like, what are you talking about? And
musician, and even politician, after being elected mayor of Carmel, California. His early acting years were unimpressive, but all that changed in 1958, when Eastwood was cast as Rowdy Yates in the TV series Rawhide. When the series ended, his career rocketed to international status when he starred in the spaghetti western A Fistful of Dollars. A box office success, it was followed by For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He became the 1970s biggest male box office star with his Dirty Harry franchise, playing a tough San Francisco detective who wouldn't play by the rules.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Clint's creative ability was broad, and soon he showed it directing movies. First with Play Misty for Me, made for only $750,000. It earned the studio just under $11 million. Clint Eastwood's directing career had begun. Nominated 11 times, Eastwood has won 4 Oscars: Best Director for Unforgiven, Best Picture for American Sniper, and Best Director and Best Picture for $1 Million Baby. Clint also played a cameo in the 2012 Republican Convention, stealing the spotlight from nominee Mitt Romney as he took on an empty chair. Few have had such a remarkable life so far. Clint Eastwood has written the musical scores for 8 films, appeared in over 200 television shows, acted in 64 pictures, directed another 40, and produced 25 features. And he's not finished yet. You're watching An American Life on NEWSMAX TV.
This is personal to me as well, folks, segment after segment. If you ask leaders in the military, for the most part, they believe the Constitution doesn't apply to servicemen and women. Now, it's not actually true, but that doesn't stop them from acting with near impunity, especially when it comes to their response to the vaccine mandates. Even after it was removed, folks. Look at this. In August of 2021, COVID vaccines became mandatory for the military. We know that. A young Marine, Catherine Arnett, a devout Christian, requested a religious exemption citing her beliefs. After that request was denied, her appeal was also turned down. What's the point of having an exemption if you're just going to deny those? She was then ordered to board 2 military flights to the U.S. to be discharged from the military, and then the military said boarding those flights required her to be vaccinated. The Marine Corps used that as a reason to Article 92 and Article 87 court-martial her for failure to obey an order. An order she applied for a religious exemption from, and that kept getting denied. In January of this year, this guy right here, Major General Eric Austin, ordered that she be discharged. And almost immediately subsequent to that order, nearly 2 weeks after the Pentagon had already rescinded the vaccine mandate, Catherine was detained and put in solitary confinement, where she remained for 113 days. She was released this past Monday, immediately following the notification of the Pipe Hitter Foundation involvement. Joining me now, Andrea Gallagher, president of Pipe Hitter Foundation. Full disclosure, I'm also on the board of this fantastic group. But Andrea, I appreciate you taking the initiative to launch this and get this thing going. Did I miss anything?
No, you're spot on, Carl. I would say the only thing that I would elaborate on is that although this is directly tied to the vaccine mandates, this is a level of harassment and bullying that we haven't seen, gosh, since our case. And this really is atrocious. Knowing the fact that this young lady had signed on to serve her country, she had an impeccable record up until the point where she was then a target for the military. And you can just see the trail of charges they've thrown against her. Yeah. They threw a forgery charge on there. They threw all different things in order to basically get the ability to throw her into a pretrial confinement, which they are abusing, by the way. This young lady was detained January 23rd in an Okinawa prison brig, and then she was then moved without her family's knowledge to the Miramar brig in San Diego. And the scary thing is, Carl, this young lady has been fighting for years against this, and now this escalation of their tactics to basically criminalize her, kick her out, and harass her have come to a real crescendo that we've obviously gotten involved in.
And you know, the military has responded and said, "Oh no, we're not doing this for the vaccine mandate. We're doing this because she violated a direct order." Well, it turns out, and you know this as well as anyone, but for the people at home, they gave her an order that was, in order to complete that order legitimately, she would have had to have been vaccinated. And the military knew that, and they pushed it anyway. You guys are supporting this through Pipe Hitter Foundation. Where do people go to find out more, and how can they support people like this?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, Carl, when we found out the situation that she was moved there, Sunday night we sent a PHF representative, and they found her there that she was basically locked up. She had been there 113 days, no visitors, no legal representation. She was given a JAG by the military. She was told to take a plea deal. She was then basically in this restricted housing in solitary. When we got involved, Carl, and so we activated this campaign, as you know, our board of directors voted unanimously to support this young lady. We activated the campaign. Within 24 hours, they had just released her on the streets from the brig at Miramar without anything. She called a Pipe Hitter representative.
From a
At
payphone.
this point now, we've given her legal counsel. We're activating with members of Congress who are outraged at this treatment of this young lady. And anyone that wants to go can donate, support, and find out more information at pipehitterfoundation.org.
pipehitterfoundation.org. Andrea, I appreciate you heading up this fight, and I'm sure she does too, as well as all the service members.
We're not going to stop. You know that, Carl.
I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. You ever think about switching parties? Well, for one New York county, the residents had no say in the matter whatsoever. And Evita Duffy and Kay Smythe are standing by to break it all down. Culture Clash is next.
Sometimes.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal,
pushing this forward in the Senate.
Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary.
Smart and
On the
cozy.
flyleaf,
Expand your
under
team
the heading
with a fiber
My
frequency.
Pledge,
False or
he had written
misleading search
these
results
words:
can negatively.
America must win this war. Therefore, I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
Well, if you live anywhere near the East Coast, you know that much of New York State's population is about as far left as San Francisco. There's some pockets, mostly outside the cities, where conservatives do actually exist. Nassau County on Long Island is one of those areas. According to the New York Board of Elections voter enrollment figures, the county has 412,000 registered Democrats and 315,000 Republicans. But all that changed this week. Every voter in Nassau County who received a voter registration card is now a Democrat. Weird. The company that mailed out the cards apparently had a printing error. Right, I'm sure that's the case. Joining me now, Avita Duffy, staff writer for The Federalist, and Kay Smythe, news commentary writer for The Daily Caller and host of Kay Saves the USA. Okay, Avita, go to you first on this one. I'm kind of always skeptical on why the errors are always in favor of the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think that's how the people of that community feel as well. I did some reading about the story. It does seem like it was an honest mistake on the part of the printing company, but it makes total sense why the people...
We had to slow it down, and that's a nice little right hand to the guy on the grounds, and then you see the arrest footage, and that's it. I've seen like 3.5 minutes of like guys hitting girls, girls hitting girls.
You're the expert.
Like, yeah, multiple families involved. This is like your average Disney brawl.
Okay, so we'll move on. Up next, it's time for some cleaning confessions. A shocking poll reveals that half of Americans pretend not to see a mess so that others are left to clean it up. This really resonated with me. Jesse, I feel like you probably
So Emma
look
leaves
away.
her sneakers right in the entryway to pretty much every room, but into the bedroom. And I know she knows they're there, but she puts them there, and they're right in my line of walking. And I know she sees them, and I have to step over them. Sometimes I pick up her sneakers and then put them in her closet. She doesn't even acknowledge that. Like, oh, Jesse, like, yeah, I noticed she moved my sneakers into my closet. Like, we just pretend like it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because it's not a big deal.
There's not a lot of messes, but I do remember, this is years ago, when Jasper was a pretty young puppy, and he had this pink pig, the stuffed animal. And I was so tired of picking up all the toys, and he had left it in the middle of the hallway. And so I just kept stepping over it. And I noticed after like, I'm like, how long will this pig stay here with nobody picking it up? Not Peter, not me. And it was like almost a week that the pink pig sat there. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't have children where you're picking up toys all the time. But
Well, that's like when you like test your cleaning lady and you leave like a specific
that? You
mess
test
in
the
a
cleaning
specific
lady?
area just to see how vigilant she is at cleaning.
Jesse.
Greg.
I test my cleaning lady too. I put money on a string, Jesse, and I hang in places. You make me sick. How dare you? You know, messes are in the eyes of the beholder, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's your mess, it doesn't matter. If it's somebody else's mess, it's disgusting. Like when you go over to somebody's house and it's dirty. I won't go in there again. So that's why I don't hang out with Hammer.
Poor Hammer.
My husband also moves the shoes, so I think that just might be a nice husband thing. We'll give you some credit, Jesse.
Well, I mean, or you could just put them in the closet.
Or you could put them in the closet.
I do.
Jesse,
but they're not my shoes.
You could keep doing that.
Here's a blanket thank you
Maybe
for putting the shoes in the closet.
I don't think it's going to last, Jesse.
Really?
The marriage. One more thing is up next. A lot.
Hello guys, how are you? Streaming today, getting very cool. Okay.
Dead bodies when he was being admitted into the sorority. Really strange. Not somebody who seems to be mentally stable. And the higher ups at the sorority wanted him to be part of it and pushed them to admit him for political purposes, which is so wrong and puts their safety on the line.
Kay, 15 seconds to you.
I mean, again, this is just normalized, progressive trash. This is the kind of thing. They're trying to eradicate women, they're trying to eradicate safety, and they're trying to eradicate the Republicans.
Yeah.
This is not going to be the last time this happens, but I hope that this suit sets precedent so that more women can protect themselves from predatory men into the future.
Yeah. Men out of women's spaces. Weird concept. Thank you, Evita Duffy and Kay Smythe.
Thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere, folks. Back in a sec.
Following the assassination of President William McKinley in September of 1901, Theodore Roosevelt, at age 43, became America's youngest president ever. Born on September 27, 1858, to a wealthy family of Dutch origin, Teddy, as the world would know him, overcame a sickly childhood with debilitating asthma by advocating a strenuous lifestyle. In 1876, he entered Harvard, joined the rowing team, and later graduated magna cum laude. Following graduation, he married Alice Hathaway. In 1881, Teddy joined the Republican Party and was elected to the New York State Assembly. Following the unexpected deaths of his wife, who died during childbirth, and his mother, both on Valentine's Day 1884, Roosevelt retreated to the seclusion of his Dakota ranch and soon became a cowboy. 2 years later, he would wed his childhood sweetheart, Edith Carroll. He had a monumental career in politics, serving as New York City's police commissioner and even Assistant Secretary of the Navy. During the Spanish-American War of 1898, Colonel Roosevelt volunteered and rode to fame as commander of the Rough Riders, defeating a larger force up the famed San Juan Hill in Cuba. By then, Roosevelt was a national hero. Returning from the war, he was quickly elected governor of New York and then picked by President McKinley to be his running mate in 1900. After President McKinley's death in 1901, now President Theodore Roosevelt became known for speaking softly but carrying a big stick, especially when it came to dealing with Japan and Germany's emergence on the world stage. His big stick turned out to be America's new modern and powerful Navy. He called it the Great White Fleet and had it tour across the globe. On the home front, he broke up the nation's trusts, stamping out monopolies that sought to dominate America's business and political life. He also became the nation's first environmental crusader and was known for expanding our national parks and protecting over 150 million acres of forests. While serving as president from 1901 to 1909, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to end the Russian-Japanese War. Roosevelt didn't run for a third term, but left that for William Howard Taft. Taft won, but disappointed Roosevelt, who in 1912 decided to challenge his one-time friend under the Progressive or Bull Moose Party.
Here in North America alone, so adding less than 1 million, not a really big number.
All right, full disclosure, NBC owns Peacock that you saw on the screen there. What about the writer's strike? How big of a deal is that now for all of these streamers?
It's a big deal. We're talking about over 11,000 writers on strike right now. Netflix had already reduced its content spend this quarter by $1 billion. So the fact that they don't have writers right now to work on these programs might be helpful in terms of saving money, but they're not going to be putting a lot of new shows out. They have some new shows coming up. Of course, Stranger Things Season 5, that might be delayed because of this strike right now. Emily in Paris, that might be delayed because of the strike right now. So it's affecting all of the content providers, all the streaming services. Netflix not alone with that, and it also wants to grow this ad-supported program, so not great timing either.
Yeah, I was just going to say the timing is terrible, right? Because so many people are cutting the cable right now, and so if they're cutting the cable, or in some cases cutting the stream, and at the meantime there's nothing to entice them to keep them if the writers are on strike.
Yeah, and that's what all the streaming platforms are facing right now, because if they can't put out new programming, it's hard to get new subscribers to join their networks. And you also have to ask yourself, how many more people are out there that don't already have a subscription here? So it's battling with all these other companies to get these eyeballs and these paid eyeballs on this ad-supported network.
All right, so quickly now, the ad market has been soft for months now. Is Netflix where advertisers want to put their money? At least you know you got...
Oh, that's okay. The son knows what she's doing. She was in good hands. Her son is part of the global FMX motocross circuit. See, that is a cool one.
Wow, well done.
Finally.
That might put mine to shame. So there's a London-based artist. I think she's pretty cool. Her name is Helga Stenzel. She uses her imagination and old clothes and a clothing line to put her artistic skills on display. Good. I mean, you could do this in the suburbs, Jesse, where you have a clothesline and you could show people. Look at this elephant coming up. I think that's a really... Oh, the zebra. That's a good one. She even has a camel.
Make my underpants an iguana.
And put your shoes away. Also, don't miss my latest Everything Will Be Okay podcast. It's out now. I talked to a woman named Dr. Casey Means about taking care of your health and metabolism. Levels Health is a company.
A little doctor on doctor action, huh?
It's like the German mother-son all over again.
Yes. Jesse. You.
So the woke are coming for the Wienermobile, that's right. No. After 87 years, the folks at Oscar Mayer have decided to change the name of the iconic Wienermobile to the Frankmobile. I'm not going to stand for this, and neither should you. No. I'm calling for action in the streets, protests, don't be violent. Hashtag bring back our Wienermobile. Let's get that trending. Tonight, Jesse Waters primetime. Kamala Harris's secret parking lot interview.
Wow.
Dana has a lot to say about that.
She's on. All right, Katie.
Okay, a Florida man is setting the record for the longest underwater habitation. He's on his 77th day living at the Jules Undersea Lodge in Key Largo. He set a record on Saturday at 74 days, but is refusing to resurface until he hits the 100-day mark on June 9th. And he says living underwater is great, except for he misses the sun.
And you know those bubbles are not coming from the fish.
Where would they be coming from?
I have no idea. Flatulence, perhaps? I said it, Brett. Back to you.
Yes, you did. Is Jesse having Vice President Harris on?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You didn't know that. It's a very big surprise.
Just checking. It's a big night. Okay, thanks, Greg.
Big guy.
Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. Breaking tonight, Montana becomes the first state in the U.S. to completely ban
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وعدنا إليكم من جديد في قناتنا قناة كورة تو، وإليكم اليوم معلومة رياضية جديدة وخبر جديد عن لاعب كرة قدم تونسي هو عبد الله بن رباح. عبد الله العلوي.
Whether what they did was arbitrary and capricious.
Well, we've been talking a lot about the future access to this abortion pill, and recently the Supreme Court just last month actually
ties to Russia. Swalwell goes on to describe the FBI failure to respect the law as a simple process foul. A process foul? Well, maybe you know what a process foul is. I do not. And then there is New York Congressman Jerry Nadler. He says the Durham report is much ado about nothing. Nadler went on to say he disagrees with claims that there was no evidence of collusion. However, Nadler has not produced any evidence. Also this week, two former FBI officials who lost their jobs at the FBI made appearances on TV to respond to Durham's report. Former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and former Deputy Assistant Director for Counterintelligence Peter Strzok.
There is nothing new here. We knew from the very beginning exactly what John Durham was going to conclude, and that's what we saw today. We knew from the very beginning this was never a legitimate investigation. This was a political errand to exact some sort of retribution on Donald Trump's perceived enemies in the FBI.
This is a predictable, sad ending to an investigation that never should have taken place. And the results are clearly that he didn't come up with anything. This was worth opening. I agreed with opening it. I wrote the opening EC. It absolutely should have been opened. And the proof of that, again, is look at all those people who were found guilty in the course of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation.
Durham's report refers to those two former officials as follows, quote, upon receipt of unevaluated intelligence information, the FBI swiftly opened the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, in particular at the direction of Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and Deputy Assistant Director for Counterintelligence Peter Strzok. The report goes on to say Strzok and Deputy Director McCabe's special assistant had pronounced hostile feelings towards Trump. In text messages before and after the opening of Crossfire Hurricane, the two had referred to Trump as loathsome, an idiot, someone who should lose to Clinton 100 million to zero. A person who Strzok wrote, will stop from becoming president. Gray Analytics Vice President, General Counsel, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Jay Town, joins me. Jay, I got to tell you, first of all, welcome to D.C.
Yeah, thank you.
I got to tell you, I can't believe McCabe and Strzok get on TV. And for McCabe to say there's nothing new here, we knew from the very beginning exactly what John Durham was going to conclude. Well, that's exactly what they did.
Well, they also knew what Durham was going to conclude because they knew Durham was going to get to the truth, which they've known all along. Every time Peter Strzok and McCabe go on television, active agents in the Bureau throw something at their own television set and yell, "Stop helping us," because Peter Strzok and Andrew McCabe are not individuals that the Bureau wants representing the Bureau out there. They are an embarrassment. The report that John Durham released, what it says, and there's not even tea leaves, it's very direct. What the Durham report says is that these individuals were unprofessional. They acted on unpredicated offenses. They opened investigations they never should have opened, and all of the evidence that they got that was exculpable they didn't even consider and just dismissed as ruined. So that's Peter Strzok. That's Andrew McCabe. That's Jim Comey. And those individuals have all embarrassed the FBI for the last 6 or 7 years.
All right, those soundbites ran from two news organizations, CNN and MSNBC. I worked at both those news organizations, and I'm proud of my work at both news organizations. But the idea to put those two are almost single-handedly taking down the FBI when there's so many good men and women from across this country who are right now serving warrants and maybe getting shot at, and they protect us day in and day out. And put those two on to say things like Peter Strzok saying, this is a predictable, sad ending to an investigation that never should have taken place. Well, his investigation never should have taken place. And he's the guy who was sending the love emails to another agent at the time, which got all hooked up into this.
That was working on Crossfire Hurricane with him, right? And remember, this was the insurance policy, right? All of this was the insurance policy to keep Trump out of the White House. And I make this distinction because I think it matters. The Comey FBI has set back the institution of the FBI decades. And the Wray FBI is paying that tab. And that's just what Chris Wray signed up for. There's still people within the Bureau, and like you said, there's 38,000 brave men and women in the FBI that do brave things and good things and keep us safe every day. But the Comey FBI is an embarrassment. It is an outrage what happened in 2016 and early 2017. You can't dismiss that.
And I don't think we can go another second without talking about it with Comey, head of the FBI, slipped a document to his friend in New York, so his friend in New York would then give it to the media. He leaked an old document. I mean, I can't think of a better way, a more precise way to show what the betrayal of the FBI and to the members of the FBI than when Comey did that. All right, let me go to another topic. Last week, I broke the news that Peru is extraditing Joran Vandersloot to the United States. He faces a 2-count felony indictment, and if convicted, he could get 40 years in prison right here in the U.S. Vandersloot is the prime suspect in Natalie Holloway's May 2005 disappearance in Aruba. This morning, Vandersloot's lawyer spoke to the Daily Mail. Maximo Altes says that his client, Vandersloot, wants to be extradited so that he can clear his name. The lawyer said, quote, Joran wants to go to the U.S. to prove he did not ask Ms. Holloway for money. He realized he can be absolved of the charges. The attorney also said a year ago, Vandersloot asked his wife, who he met while in prison and married in 2014 in prison and had a child, he asked her for a divorce. Vandersloot's lawyer also said Vandersloot wants a divorce, or wanted a divorce, to be with a, quote, prettier and younger girlfriend who has been accused of smuggling him drugs in jail. Boy, you can't make this stuff up, can you?
Yeah, I mean, psychopathy is real, and there's at least one individual in a Peruvian prison right now who suffers from it.
I think his lawyer. I mean, what kind of lawyer makes a statement to the press that his client wants to get divorced because he wants a younger and prettier woman? That's real helpful.
Right, and wants to clear his name at the same time. So I'm really a good guy. You know, he better take a big whiff, because when he sets foot on Alabama red mud, he is going to get all the justice that he has coming his way, that the entire justice system can offer him. It's going to be fair.
Well, it's going to be fair. Sure. He's entitled to every constitutional right that any of us. He's going to get a lawyer appointed for him. He's got a federal defender.
He already has one.
Oh, he already has a lawyer appointed for him. He's going to get a complete fair justice here in the United States.
Yeah, and then he's going to be found guilty of 2 felonies and be sentenced for it. That's my prediction. And Joran Vandersloot, I'm talking to you. So it is, you know, a lot of this is just show it's sociopathy or psychopathy. This is an individual who does not care what crimes he's committed. You know that. You've investigated this for 18 years. Beth Holloway knows it. This maybe is the best we can do, is get him on extortion and wire fraud charges.
It's 40
but
years.
It's not nothing.
Well, he can get 40 years on this, and he got 28 years for strangling and beating to death Stephanie Flores in Peru. So get him 40 years on this. I should also say, though, that, you know, the FBI, this is why I'm tipping my hat to the FBI. They're the ones who are going to go down and pick him up, not the U.S. Marshal Service. They keep saying it's U.S. Marshal Services, but it's our FBI that's going to go down and pick him up, and they're going to give him his rights, and they're going to bring him here, and he'll meet his lawyer for the first time, and he'll hear the charges, and he'll get a fair trial with a fair jury.
Yep, he will, and then he'll be sentenced, and he'll go back to Peru, come back to the United States, serve the rest of that sentence, and he still has hell to look forward to. So he's going to be a busy boy in the next 50 or 60 years, Greta.
Maybe he can find another younger, prettier woman after he gets rid of this one who smuggles drugs into the prison.
Sure, yeah. No, this guy's something else.
And wait a minute, the lawyer, though, look, I actually feel sorry for him that his lawyer's going out there saying these things. That's the Peruvian lawyer, not the PD. Federal defender in Alabama. Anyway, Jay Town, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greta.
Coming up, as the U.S. edges closer to the June 1st debt ceiling deadline, the President, the Senate, and the House are busy playing the blame game. Can they reach an agreement before time runs out? When the record continues.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. NEWSMAX is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to NEWSMAX when they really need to know. They watch NEWSMAX TV at home. On the free NEWSMAX app, they go to newsmax.com. Start today. NEWSMAX is real news for real people.
Our strategy to go after this army.
Receive the death penalty because it's the only way you're going to stop it. You know, I went to China and I had a great time, and it was amazing culture, frankly, and I was with President Xi. 1.4 to 1.5 billion people. I said, you have a drug problem? No drug problem. I said, you mean with all these people you don't have a drug problem? No drug problem. Well, what do you ascribe the reason to, may I ask? I think I knew. He said, swift trial. You know, there's no games with it. These people, you know, when you meet with President Xi, he doesn't say, gee, how'd the Yankees do last night? Oh, we have a lovely day. Lovely day. Isn't it beautiful out? Oh, it's so beautiful, Donald. It's so great. He goes, we will immediately proceed to work. And you know what? I love that. I think that's great. There's no bullshit. Okay? I think that's great. We will proceed. You meet him for 2 minutes. We will proceed. There's no games. Yeah, how did the Boston Red Sox do today? No, they don't talk about that stuff. They talk about other things. But I said to him, so what do you think? He says, quick trial. Quick trial. You know what a quick trial is? They take the person, they try the person, and if they're a drug dealer, if they're selling drugs, unfortunately, they have the death penalty. And I don't think this country's ready for it. But they have no drug problem whatsoever. The big drug problem they have is they make drugs and send them into our country, like fentanyl. And even that, I had him set, except for this rigged election, he was set to make that a criminal, an absolute crime, with a death penalty for anybody making fentanyl. But once I left, once this horrible election took place, they send more over now than ever before. He was going to give the death penalty. That was his deal with me. He was going to give the death penalty to anybody that produced fentanyl. Can you believe that in China? It's too bad. All these people are dying all over. We're being invaded. It's like a human invasion. To combat the scourge of homelessness that is plaguing Democrat-run cities such as Manchester, I will use every possible authority to get the homeless off the streets immediately. It's so bad. It's so sad. And you know, you have great hearts, especially the people of New Hampshire. And you know, you don't want to even talk about it. You don't want to say, gee, there's 15 people laying in front of my building. You know, you feel badly about it, but you got to do something. For a small fraction of what we spend in Ukraine, we could take every single homeless veteran in America and take care of them. Likewise, with all the money we will save by ending mass unskilled migration. That's what it is, mass unskilled. You see where in California now they're giving them medical care, education. They're getting treated better than our veterans are treated. And you know, when they see that, they all come. They say, oh, you mean you're going to give us free medical? Can you? This is not even believable. In California, free, and other places, free medical, education. The classrooms, you have people that can't even speak English, and they're sitting all over the classroom. It's killing our country. But we will have a huge dividend to address the homeless crisis in our own country. We're going to save a tremendous amount of money. We're going to take care of them. We will get the homeless into tent cities, shelters, rehab, and mental institutions, and we'll get them off the streets of our cities. And living like that is no good for them, the homeless, and it's no good for the people that have to make our cities great again. You can't make your cities great when you have thousands of people laying all over the streets. To uphold our Second Amendment, I will ask Congress to put a bill on my desk delivering national concealed carry reciprocity. And I will immediately restore free speech in America. We've lost our free speech. And we've lost our press. We've lost our media. It's so sad what happens to them. They don't report. It's not even what they report. They don't report. They didn't report the Biden stuff. They knew about it. They had the 51 intelligence agents. You saw that? Where they said, yeah, it's Russian disinformation. We don't have to report it. These are corrupt people. This is this. And everybody knew that wasn't true. And we will take care of our amazing veterans. And we did it, you know, for 4 years. We had a 92% rating at the VA, at the vet. 92%. We did a great job. The highest rating by far that they've ever had. On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. I will also support parents' rights. Can you believe I have to say that? Can you believe I'm saying I will support parents' rights? Can you imagine 15 years ago saying, I will support parents' rights? So people would look at you and say, this guy's crazy. Parents' rights, of course. Who wouldn't support that? There are people that don't want the parents to have any rights, including the direct election of school principals by the parents, so you can get people that you want. If any principal is not getting the job done, the parents should be able to vote and fire him, get him out, get somebody that will get it done. And I will not give 1 penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. Crazy. We did a great job, but we didn't mandate anything. The Democrat governors would run their states, and generally they did those mandates, and they were disasters. And a lot of them, they really did it right. Republican governors, when you look at what happened. And I will tell you another thing that people can't even believe. I will keep men out of women's sports, okay? No, did you ever hear of anything like that? You saw the other day the weightlifter and
Agreement, but that doesn't get rid of our debt.
That's right. We have this.
It just means we can borrow more. We're getting an extension on our credit cards.
And there's nothing demographically in sight that's going to make this any better, right? Nothing. We have more and more people retiring. We have this big problem with people not wanting to work because they were on the dole during all the shutdowns with COVID and everything else. We have massive economic problems in our society, and no one's really doing anything about it, which is why in politics with this presidential race coming up, voices that kind of come out of places with bold new solutions, whether it's Vivek or Bobby Kennedy or these people, they're going to get a lot of attention because people aren't dumb. They realize America's got some very serious challenges.
DeSantis versus Trump.
Yeah, look, I think the Kentucky primary results is indicative. Trump's at 70% in the polls in Kentucky. I really think Trump's going to get this nomination. I think anybody who's a fair-minded prognosticator says he's the leader and he has a great chance to get it. Not done. DeSantis could do some things to make it more difficult for Trump. He just came out today with a whole bunch of Florida state legislators that endorsed him, almost all of them, which belied the Trump who got almost all the congressional delegation to endorse him. So look, they're skirmishing with each other, but at the end of the day, it's a tough road for DeSantis. He's not in the race yet. If he loses, does he harm his future political ambitions? I think that's the calculus that people around him are going through.
Matt Steff, always nice to see you. Thank you.
Good to be with you.
And the 2024 presidential race, which we just mentioned, is heating up. Next week on May 22nd, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott says he will officially announce his candidacy for president. Meanwhile, fellow 2024 hopeful, former UN ambassador and former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, is headed to Davenport, Iowa this weekend for a meet and greet with voters. And then next week, she's off to New Hampshire to take part in the New England Council's ongoing political series, Politics and Eggs. The event will be hosted at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. This is the first Politics and Eggs event of 2023. The record continues after this.
First meeting President Biden had with the Big Four last week did not go well at all. Speaker McCarthy even accusing the president of lying about what Republicans had already passed in the House. It was obvious that yesterday's meeting went far better from both sides' perspective. And one of the reasons that even Speaker McCarthy was sounding more positive about the tenor of talks is because both sides have really delegated and empowered some of their top lieutenants to get further into the weeds on some of the most thorny differences between both sides. You have on the side of Speaker McCarthy, Congressman Garrett Graves, who's quietly emerged as one of his top allies in that rambunctious House caucus, and President Biden tasking some of the familiar names we've seen in a lot of congressional negotiations of late, Louisa Terrell, the director of the Office of Legislative Affairs, Steve Fischetti, who's one of his longest-serving top aides. But the real, I think, focus is on Shalonda Young. She's the head of the Office of Management and Budget, a good person to have in budget negotiations. But more importantly, she has long relationships with Republicans in the House from her time, for her 10 years, in fact, as a staffer on the Appropriations Committee. So the hope is that she's going to be able to get into the weeds with the Republicans, make some headway that the president can be updated on while he's traveling overseas. And then when the president returns next Monday for what would likely be a third meeting with the Big Four, they can maybe get into the plan for what happens next. Can they present it to their caucuses? Because the time is ticking. We're just 15 days ahead of that deadline. The president's going to be overseas here for 5 of them. And so the time is ticking, and hopefully for both sides, they can make some progress here.
All right, let's talk about the G7. As you and I have discussed, the global economy is based in dollars. So this does have a ripple effect across the entire global economy and the G7. Ukraine, likely to be a big focus, but talking war in a city like Hiroshima, the very name evokes war. That will be poignant. But also China, both in its economic expansion and the threats to Taiwan, and the president floating this idea that he may want to talk to China's Xi Jinping sometime soon, right?
Yeah, that's right, Tom. I mean, you look at Biden's whole foreign policy, it's been premised on the idea that democracies, in Biden's view, can deliver in a way that the autocracies, Russia and China, he argues, cannot. And you see on this trip that whole premise being challenged. The president wants to show American leadership, especially here in China's backyard. He was supposed to meet with the leaders of the Quad, an alliance of Indo-Pacific countries that is premised on pushing China as they have tried to exert their influence in the region. And you also have that visit to Papua New Guinea that the president had to cancel. That was also a big display of force by the U.S., at least it was supposed to be. And so the president was asked today if China is actually winning in this equation, and maybe even whether the president will have a chance to talk with President Xi Jinping. Monica Alba actually asked the president that earlier today. Let's listen.
With President Xi soon, sir?
That's my, whether it's soon or not, we will be meeting.
So there has been a lot of ramp up of high-level conversations between U.S. officials and their Chinese counterparts. Not that leader-to-leader conversation just yet, and the White House is saying still some time before we potentially see that meeting later this year, if it happens.
Mike Memoli in Japan hasn't slept yet. So, Mike, breakfast and then a nap. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. The ongoing culture war on book bans in Florida is at the center of a new lawsuit against a school district in Florida. Penguin, Random House, authors, Florida parents, and an advocacy group are all getting in on this suit after the Escambia County School District and its school board banned 10 books related to race and the LGBTQ community. The lawsuit argues that removing books on these topics is part of a clear agenda. Since late May, the district and the board have removed or indefinitely restricted access to 5 books by the author plaintiffs. The ones you see here on the screen, they include Uncle Bobby's Wedding, Two Boys Kissing, and others. NBC's Antonia Hilton joins me now. Antonia, the lawsuit cites the First and the 14th Amendments here, right? So talk us through how this plays out.
That's right, Tom. It's focused on free speech and the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment. And they're arguing that they're alleging that this district removed these books that are disproportionately about people of color and LGBTQ children and their lives and their families, that they removed them and in some cases didn't even follow their own district policies about how to review them and how to do them, or that they overrode recommendations made by community members who were on committees and looked at these books closely. Their hope is that this district will put these books back onto shelves and that other districts in Florida that have been engaged in something similar will do the same. 2 of the families that have been included in this suit, they've argued that their kids, who are students right now in the district, deserve access to materials that are diverse, that include multiple types of families, storylines, kids of all backgrounds, and that public schools have an obligation to provide that kind of diversity of material. Take a listen to an interview with George M. Johnson, one of the authors of one of the most banned books in this lawsuit.
When you have a book that is telling a first-hand account of what it is like to grow up in this country being Black and queer and giving representation to a community that rarely gets to see themselves seen in books, seen on television, it creates an empowerment for those students.
This is a big deal here. This lawsuit, of course, is directed at this one school district, but it will have implications because this is part of a broader movement we're seeing in school districts around the country right now, from California to Colorado to Florida. And the authors here have partnered with Penguin Random House, the largest publisher here, and they're bringing in children's voices and their families' voices into this too. And so it's going to be interesting to see, in Florida, which has become a hotbed of this culture war, what kinds of changes may come now.
So Florida really is, it seems right now, ground zero for the culture war. And there's a broader context here beyond Florida's political landscape, how this is kind of spreading and becoming a hot political issue nationwide.
That's right. DeSantis has made this a major part of his platform. We're waiting to see, when and if he'll be announcing his run for president. But all indications are that these issues around books, race, gender, and sexuality, or what he calls, these woke issues, that they're going to animate his campaign and his remaining leadership in the state of Florida. In fact, just on Monday, he signed a new bill into law that is going to keep public colleges and universities from being able to fund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and will limit the ways in which race and issues related to discrimination can be taught in those public colleges. And so, we're seeing these changes happen not just in public schools, not just among children, for whom there's long been debate about what kinds of materials are appropriate for them, but also at the college and university level, Tom.
All right, Antonia, thank you very much. Antonia Hilton. Some breaking news we have just now. Montana's governor just signed the country's first law completely banning TikTok. It goes further than any other state's moves to ban that social media app. The ban is expected to face some legal challenges, potentially determining the fate of the app in the country. Now, in a statement, TikTok says the governor signed a bill that is, quote, infringing on First Amendment rights by unlawfully banning TikTok. It goes on to say people in Montana can continue to use the app to express themselves. We want to bring in NBC legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, what are the ins and the outs, I should say, of this ban? How can people still use this app in Montana if it's banned?
Well, apparently it doesn't criminalize actual users' conduct. It criminalizes the sale. So it targets the app sellers. That might be the App Store, or that might be TikTok itself. And that would make sense from Montana's perspective. Far better to go after a deep pocket like TikTok than go after individual users who are probably 18, 19 years old, and who knows if they have any assets or whether they're worth prosecuting. So probably a smart strategy if that's what the ban does, but it leaves itself open to a number of different challenges. Most notably the First Amendment and something called the Dormant Commerce Clause. Basically, an individual state can't unnecessarily or unduly burden interstate commerce. But what exactly that means is a little hazy, and it's moved a lot over the years. Even in the last decade or so, it's been redefined. And then perhaps most importantly is that traditionally the Commerce Clause dealt with things like widgets, tangible items that are sold in a particular state. It's a totally different thing with this modern use of the internet and apps like this, because where is it sold? Where is it used? Where is the application? Where is the jurisdiction for this application? A lot of complicated issues. So you can expect there will be challenges, and soon.
Yeah, a reminder, the government is concerned that anything you do on TikTok might be fed to Chinese intelligence and the Chinese military. But if you live in Montana, under this application of the law, the governor can tell you what you can and can't have on your phone, even if you put it on your phone in a different state. How in the world are they ever going to enforce this?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you raised the issue. When we live in a global community, sorry, I'm using my phone. There I am, I'm back. When we live in a global community like this, the internet asks a difficult question: where is some kind of conduct actually happening? If you're looking at your phone, but you downloaded it in Montana, but you're looking at it, say, in California, is the conduct happening, or did it happen in Montana? So those are all thorny issues that we all have to deal with in the modern internet age. And this law that seeks to criminalize this kind of conduct or punish it is going to be subjected to a number of different challenges, one of which is going to be jurisdictional and where does the conduct actually happen?
And who would ever police this? It seems awfully challenging and difficult. Danny, thank you very much. Coming up, we have more breaking news coming in. The House just voted to send a resolution to expel Representative George Santos. That suggestion going to the Ethics Committee. What this means for the push to get him out. Plus, disgraced Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes just lost her last-minute bid to avoid prison when she has to start her 11-year sentence coming up. And new details tonight about how Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is further restricting LGBTQ rights in that state. That is coming up in our 5 Things.
We had an audio interruption there, Lexi. Could you repeat that?
Oh, yeah. So I had asked with them sending out these kits to be tested, do you know how they prioritize them? I would imagine if they have a bunch of these at different law enforcement agencies, how they're able to decide which they're able to send out at a certain time.
Yeah, so if a law enforcement agency has a really big batch of these kits that they want to be tested all at once, it could take a number of weeks, possibly even months, to get through those depending on how urgently they're needed. The doctor did tell me also, though, that if there was a specific case that needed to be expedited, that's a service that they also provide. They will make sure that it's done as quickly as possible. The soonest they can get one of these processed is within 1 week's time.
All right, very interesting. Fox's Austin Westfall live there in Charlotte, North Carolina. Austin, thanks so much.
Thanks, Lexi.
Okay, and continuing to move along here, another high-stakes abortion battle is before a powerful court today. At stake whether a popular abortion bill can remain on the market after challenges to its FDA approval. It could also set up a bigger fight that goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Fox's Lauren Blanchard is in Washington with more.
The Biden administration is back in court to fight for the future of mifepristone, a widely used abortion medication.
We've been very clear. The Biden-Harris administration is going to continue to fight for women's health care, for women's reproductive rights.
Mifepristone has been FDA approved since 2000. It's used in many early abortions that are done with a 2-pill regimen. It's also prescribed to help with miscarriages. The Justice Department, representing the FDA, is arguing the pill is safe in an overwhelming number of patients.
But I don't think there's ever been any court that has vacated FDA's determination that a drug is safe to be on the market.
The case is before a conservative 3-judge panel on the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, and they sounded skeptical.
And why not just focus on the facts of this case rather than have this sort of FDA can do no wrong theme?
On the other side, a group of anti-abortion doctors arguing the FDA did not appropriately approve the pill and that it should not be available by mail nor in the U.S. market.
FDA marketed mifepristone by labeling pregnancy and illness. Then FDA stripped this drug of virtually every safeguard it had once deemed necessary in order to sell the drug.
According to a Fox News poll, 2/3 of Americans say abortion pills should remain legal. An expedited decision could come within days or even weeks. The losing side will almost certainly ask the Supreme Court for final review. Until then, mifepristone will remain widely available. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
All right, Lauren, thanks so much. Live look here from Chicago. Looks like a gorgeous sunny day there. And while it is spring, it also means that if you're in the Windy City, you could see all 4 seasons happening in one day. Fox Weather's Robert Ray has more on how residents handle some of these weather swings.
Number 5, the latest advancement in condiment technology is here.
Basic fundamentals of the law. It's disturbing to me, but apparently others think it's not such a big deal.
Yeah, well, what a cute idea that we should be fair, right? How quaint that is. And let me tell you, I remember going, I've been on the House Intelligence Committee.
Along party lines. Now remember, Santos faces 13 federal charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and stealing public funds. He faces decades in prison if convicted. Right now, the Long Island Republican is pleading not guilty. NBC's Ali Vitale joins me now to talk about it. All right, Ali, walk us through what happens now with this resolution. It goes to the Ethics Committee. How long could this whole thing take?
John Durham owes the American people an apology for wasting their money. And this is from MSNBC. GOP living in its own universe with reactions to the Durham report. The media was consumed with the story 24/7 when the explosive allegations, which turned out to be false, were that Trump and his campaign had colluded with Russia. In all fairness, the Durham report findings should get equal billing and attention, as did the explosive false accusations, but they are not. Utah Congressman, member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Chris Stewart, joins me. Good evening, sir.
Hey, great to be with you.
Thank you, sir. I don't know about, I haven't talked to you about your reaction to the Durham report, but you know, I must tell you is that, you know, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think things should be fair. And when you read about the Durham report saying that the FBI and the DOJ failed to adhere to just basic fundamentals of the law, it's disturbing to me, but apparently others think it's not such a big deal.
Yeah, well, what a cute idea that we should be fair, right? How quaint that is. And let me tell you, I remember I've been on the House Intelligence Committee.
That was the truth. Did he ever have any evidence that we don't know about?
No, of course not. And we knew at the time he was saying that he didn't have evidence. And he knew at the time he was saying that he didn't have evidence. There's just no question about it. And I remember, again, sitting on the committee and listening to Mr. Schiff go on every single day and make these claims, and we would just kind of roll our eyes because we knew that it wasn't true. He didn't have evidence that the rest of us didn't have access to. He was just simply making this up. And proof of that is, okay, tell us what you had. And of course, he's not been able to answer that question. But we saw that again and again and again. We'd have classified briefings. The Democrats would go out and make claims about it that were not true, in no way actual reflection of what took place in those hearings as we worked our way through the Russian hoax. And then we weren't able to respond because many times these things were classified. But finally, at the end of the day, and frustratingly, it takes in some cases years, the truth does come out and the truth still matters. And once again, Greta, people deserve to know the truth.
Did you ever say anything to him? Because I just find this so egregious that he did this, that he said he had evidence and it turns out there was not. I mean, did he say why he was doing it? Or did you ever ask him, why are you doing this? Or where is the evidence?
Yeah, I don't know that we asked why, because we knew why, and that was just for purely political reasons. And the fact is that he and a number of other Democrats just so viscerally hated President Trump. And it was purely just a political calculation that they could make these claims and they'd never be called on it. And by the way, in the last, well, just today, I had a chance to have an interrogation, a sit down with the former Director of National Intelligence, Mr. Clapper. Last week we did with the former CIA Director, Director Brennan, who were also involved with this. Imagine the destructive nature upon our society and upon our American people when they look at the former CIA director and think, this guy's just a political hack. I mean, it's so damaging to have the former DNI, the former CIA director, involved with these types of shenanigans and dishonesty from an agency that should be 100% non-political. That's what the American people expect of someone who's directing the CIA, and we found out that these directors were completely political. They were political hackery to the core, as they have demonstrated night after night as they're on CNN or whatever other news they're on, and continue to make these kind of outrageous claims.
Then tell me this. Why do they still have a security clearance? I don't have one, and I'm not doing that stuff, and neither do the people watching the show. And why do the 51 who signed that letter that President Biden, then candidate Biden, used to tell 63 million people a debate right before the election? Why do they still have security clearances? Why haven't anyone tried to strip them of security clearances?
Well, that's a great question. I wish I could say that those of us in Congress would have the ability to decline or to take away someone's security clearance. We don't have that authority. Department of Justice and Department of Defense do. They should review that. And I got to tell you, too, at the end of the day today, after my interview with James Clapper, I asked him, do you still believe that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian information? And he said, well, I have no reason to doubt that. And then I asked, are you embarrassed? Do you wish you had not signed the letter? He said, nope, I would sign it again today. That's the type of reality that many of them are dealing with. And the challenge we have is, once again, we talk about telling the American people the truth.
Well, I don't think anyone should have a security clearance who's incompetent or dirty. I mean, either way. So, at best, it's incompetent if they're still believing that. Congressman Chris Stewart, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And coming up, We take you live to the very dangerous Darien Gap. Senior correspondent John Huddy is in Manatee, Panama. That when the record continues.
And to turn our work into kind of gig economy work where we can only work a few weeks a year and then scramble for the next gig. We're not going to let that happen. That's right! So I just wanted to say thank you. We got a lot of other speakers, but I want to say thank you to all the other workers who have showed up in solidarity with us. We really appreciate it. You've had our backs. We will have your backs. Chicago's a union town. Thank you all.
You know, Zane said it right. We have a lot of people here today. We have unions from across the city. Now, I said that this is the hometown of the American labor movement. It's also the hometown of Scabby the Rat. We've got a lot of, that's right. We got a lot of our sisters and brothers from the building trades here, operating engineers, Local 150, the IBW, the sheet metal workers, the carpenters union. I could go on and skip a bunch of people and get in a lot of trouble, but we really do have people from across the labor movement. One thing that I saw is we also have a lot of folks from our other performance unions. You know, we have a lot of people that work in the entertainment industry who both work on stage and work on screen. We have members of the musicians union here. We have members of Actors Equity. We have members of AGMA. It's just incredible to see the across the board solidarity. Now, I want to bring up a couple of Writers Guild members next. The first is Minhal Beg.
Thank you. Well, I did write something. Yes. Okay. All right. Wow. All right. Thank you all so much for coming out today. I'm really so grateful. I was not expecting this kind of turnout, and it's really just so inspiring. So my name is Minhal Beg, and I've been a member of the Writers Guild of America since 2018. In the last few years of working in television writers' rooms, I've gained experience and met lifelong friends. I've also witnessed the quick erosion of the writers' room in real time. Writers' rooms that were once 20-week-long jobs became shorter and shorter. The rooms got smaller. There were fewer opportunities for lower-level writers. Staff writers practically became non-existent. I was told by more experienced writers that going to set to produce your episode was a thing. I've never known it. I've never been to set for something I wrote. This is by design. We have been paid less and less and expected to deliver more and more. And now we've reached a point of no return. The studio wants us to feel desperate, so they make us feel powerless, like we should be lucky to have our jobs in the first place. They diminish us in the hopes that we never recognize our own power, but we make the only product they can sell. The words are where it all begins. We are the generators.
Okay, listening in there to this writer's strike that happened in the Windy City earlier today. Certainly not the first that we have been covering as this continues. We continue to hear from other people in the industry. I'm Lexi Petrovich here on the desk. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, though, more on Meghan and Harry after a car chase, something that everybody has been talking about today. We'll be joined with a live guest on the programming, royal expert Josh Rahm, who has been with us frequently. We're going to break this all down for you after the break.
In the rivers, you are risking your life. Now we're seeing a new wave of migrants pushing north through the Darien Gap. Senior correspondent John Huddy is live in Manatee, Panama with the very latest. John?
Yeah, and Greta, we heard that a surge of more than 5,000 people, 5,000 migrants
cross the border from Colombia, where you were, into Panama yesterday and crossing, as we speak, the very perilous Darien Gap, and another group of several thousand more, possibly more than 5,000, even between 5,000 and 10,000 from what we understand and from what we're hearing, are right behind that group. So the people here on the ground in Panama, in the southern part of Panama, and in these villages, including one that we were in earlier today, are expecting another surge. That includes Lajas Blancas. Lajas Blancas is where we were earlier today. You're seeing some of the images there. This is where migrants are brought. This is where they continue to be processed by Panamanian officials. They get food, they get water. Some who are robbed of their clothing get clothing. We are in Lajas Blancas, and yesterday, actually, we passed by boatloads in Pereguas, which is the traditional kind of dugout canoe with an outboard motor. We passed them coming downriver as we were en route to Bajo Chiquito. Bajo Chiquito is the remote Panamanian Indian village where these migrants, when they cross through the mountainous region part of the Darien Gap and they come out of the jungle, that's where they arrive. They're initially processed and then they're taken by boat to Lajas Blancas. We have heard one horror story after another from people talking about not only getting sick with malaria, with dysentery, with gastrointestinal problems, but also people getting robbed, people, and I hate to say it, forgive me, people getting raped, and people dying, people drowning in the swollen rivers when there's heavy mountain rains, the rivers flood, people are getting washed down the river, they're drowning in their sleep. And one really eerie sight, when we were going up the river, Greta, we saw a lot of sleeping bags and sleeping mats. We talked to today in Lajas Blancas, a Venezuelan family who actually recognized us and passed by us on the river when we were going upstream yesterday. And they described not only the horrendous journey, but what they were hoping to achieve if they can scrounge up enough money to not only get to Costa Rica from Panama, but then Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico, and ultimately the U.S. border. I talked to one woman about that. Here's what she said she was hoping and praying would happen if she got to the U.S. border. Listen here.
She was saying that she knows that it's going to be hard to get into the United States, but that they had heard a law was changing, presumably Title 42, and that she has children, so she's hoping, and the expectation is that it will be easier for her to get in with children, and that's something also that we've been hearing a lot from people. They're hearing those with young children are hoping that they can get asylum or go through the process.
I also talked to a group of Venezuelan men who said that, while they understand there's a process they need to go by to get into the United States, and it may be difficult for them, and they're still kind of waiting on more information from Panamanian authorities, and really as they go, they said they were willing to leave Venezuela because of the horrible conditions under the Maduro regime there. One of the big concerns right now, Greta, on the ground here is about the spread of infectious diseases. This region, the Darien Gap, Matete, some of these villages, is a hotspot for malaria. There's also concern among health officials, from what we understand, about other diseases, dysentery and tuberculosis spreading in these camps where, on average, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people are coming every day. Greta?
John Huddy, thank you. And on Tuesday, a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction preventing the Biden administration from using its parole with conditions policy. That policy allows illegal migrants to be released into the United States without a court date in order to reduce overcrowding at Border Patrol facilities. The judge's order came after he agreed with the state of Florida that the policy was materially identical to a parole plus alternative to detention policy that he had blocked in March. Since the preliminary injunction has been granted and since it is not permanent injunction, the judge has ordered both parties to file a status report in 2 weeks. The status report must explain how the two parties intend to proceed with the case pending resolution of an expected appeal by the Department of Homeland Security. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody joins me. Good evening, General.
Good evening. Great to be with you, Greta.
Nice to have you. So tell me, Florida is helping Texas. Tell me what you're doing.
Right. Governor DeSantis has been very strong in assisting Texas from the beginning. As you may remember, Governor DeSantis and I traveled to the border last year to check on the law enforcement from Florida that had pitched in to help. At the time, they told us that those coming over were saying that 7 out of 10 were headed to Florida. That caused us some great concern on how we would accommodate that and pay for that. As you know, all states will be dealing with this when it comes to their criminal justice systems, their health care systems, educational systems. And we know from reports now that many that are flooding in are saying again that they are headed to Florida. And so this is a really trying time for every state as we see these planned mass release policies by the Biden administration, which have only become apparent because Florida has been suing the Biden administration to block these insane, illegal policies that they have, which is basically to release most of the folks coming over into the interior.
In terms of Florida, you used to get a lot of Haitian people coming into Florida. Do you still have that? You've got a coast, of course. But the Haitians, I met a lot of Haitians in Colombia who are making their way up the Darien Gap. Are you seeing, what is the latest story on Florida and people coming in through your coastal waters?
You know, I think Florida kind of mirrors what's happening at the border. You know, it spans nationalities. In fact, what is very concerning to me, Greta, and you may have already reported on this, they've already, just in the month of April, they encountered at the border 16 people on the terrorist watch list, over 100 already this calendar year. That far exceeds those numbers that we have encountered at the past. I think this is one of the biggest security issues facing our nation right now, and it has really been disappointing, really tragic that the president has not even addressed the nation in any way since Title 42 expired, except to giggle on camera and claim that it's not as bad as we thought it would be. Although your footage and your interviews are showing exactly the opposite. So it's been very, I think it's nerve-wracking for Americans to see that they do not have a commander-in-chief that has command of the situation. And it is taking states like Florida and Texas and others to bring suit to uncover what they're actually doing.
And of course, it's such a nightmare what's going on. And we obviously got the situation. I think the last one on Haiti, they haven't had a president in 2 years. Their last one was assassinated in his home, and they haven't replaced it. And you've got a failed economy in Venezuela. I mean, it's just so nightmarish. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, thank you very much. I hope you come back.
Great to be with you.
Coming up, it's only 30 miles away. What is 30 miles away? And away from what? Start guessing. That answer coming up.
Just say that this is their decision, being non-working members of the royal family. You know, working members of the royal family have this police protection. It's well known that the Prince and Princess of Wales and their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, live a very happy life, a very safe life as part of the royal family with protection. You know, they say they want privacy, but yet they choose to live in Montecito in California with press rules that are nowhere near as stringent as those in the United Kingdom. So, you know, we have to look at this of, is this a significant incident for them? This might be, as they've got this important case in the UK. However, the NYPD seem to suggest that this might not be a near catastrophic incident, that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex seem to suggest that it is.
Yeah, and Josh, speaking of, it has been just a lot of things that have happened this week for the pair. Reportedly on Monday, someone was arrested on stalking charges outside of their home in California. And as you said, we are hearing kind of conflicting accounts from NYPD, and then also what a spokesperson is saying. Obviously, a lot of reaction comes with this. So what are you hearing from people in the UK? And also, what do you think comes next for the pair?
Well, the first and foremost, what I'm hearing from people in the UK, the first thing that comes to mind.
Interesting. If it's literally going to cost me $6, $7 to go with the ad-supported version versus $15 or so, is the problem that you know, it's not more expensive on the high end? In other words, if it's $25. Then you might say, oh yeah, $6 is a heck of a lot better. But if it's only a matter of $10, or so, you might say, I don't mind $10 to avoid the ads.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, though, Tom, is trying to attract new subscribers to the platform. It is the biggest one out there. It's got 225 million global subscribers, about 74 million just in North America alone. But the battle now is for advertising and for targeted advertising. And to wit, Netflix announcing today, again, it has that 5 million global active users. The average age is around 34 years old. For these new subscribers to the ad platform, there's new sponsorships ads. You can now, if you're a sponsor a launch of a show. You can sponsor something seasonal. You can buy the top 10 shows in the top 10 countries, have it your way. So Netflix trying to make it more amenable to potential advertisers and drum this business up. Adding subscribers is very challenging for streamers these days. How many more can they add, and where are those coming from? This is one avenue that Netflix is trying to take. It's just taken a long time.
All right, so is this really focused on the U.S. model, or is it the global audience base? Because everybody I know has Netflix, including family in Europe. I mean, it seems like everybody has Netflix. How do you grow that base?
Yeah, the growth is really going to have to come from both outside the U.S. and within. Again, it has 74 million subscribers here in the U.S. and Canada, 225 million worldwide. Now, there's a lot of people out there when you think about how many iPhones are in the pockets out there, over 1 billion or so. So there is potentially room, but there are competitive products right now, and consumers are choosing which one they want to go with depending on how much they offer and the programming that they offer, most importantly, Tom.
All right, Caleb, thank you very much. Caleb Silver. That is a wrap for us at this hour, and we will have more as the news continues with Top Story right now.
Tonight, a tale of two chases. So which side is telling the truth? A spokesperson for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle saying the couple was involved in a near
Another major title goes to Green Bay. No, not to the Packers. I mean the city of Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's only 30 miles from where I grew up, and U.S. News and World Report has just declared Green Bay the best place to live in the entire United States. I'd throw in the best NFL team, too. Rob Schmidt Tonight is up next.
A broken system protecting a corrupt first family. Let's check it out. And welcome to Rob Schmidt Tonight. An IRS whistleblower is alleging obstruction of justice by the Biden administration after Biden's DOJ goons, including Merrick Garland, removed an entire IRS team investigating the president's dysfunctional son for tax fraud. It's just one of several whistleblower allegations of corruption for the sitting president of the United States that are all being swept under the rug by Democrats and the media that they control. An incredible assault on democracy happening right before your eyes. The mainstream press continues its mission to protect Joe Biden and conceal his many potential crimes. This level of corruption and media cover-up only possible in a country that is this divided. This is why corrupt politicians sow division. It provides them so much cover. Less than a month ago, this unnamed IRS whistleblower reported preferential treatment in politics, improperly infecting decisions and protocols that would normally be followed by career law enforcement professionals in similar circumstances if the subject were not politically connected. They alleged something was clearly holding the case up that they were working on. The evidence that they were finding wasn't going anywhere like it should, like it would for the rest of us, or for that matter, for a Republican. Soon after, the entire team investigating Hunter Biden's tax fraud case was completely removed. This is what a dictatorship looks like. And most Americans, I guess, will see is that Biden's mouthpiece getting in front of the country and insulting them with such blatant lies on exactly the matter. Take a listen.
The president respects the rule of law and the independence of the Department of Justice. He believes that's what they should be. In this administration, we believe that it should be independent. So I'm not going to go beyond that. The Department of Justice will certainly deal with this issue.
Can you imagine believing that? The DOJ certainly is dealing with this issue, to say the least. The truth is the Department of Justice has become radically politicized under first Barack Obama and now Joe Biden, which is Obama too. Biden's former Attorney General, Eric Holder, once called Obama his wingman. Biden and Garland have the same relationship. It's clear. The IRS whistleblower's attorney says removing the team is retaliation for the original allegation that the investigation was being corrupted. Quote, removing the experienced investigators who have worked this case for years and are now the subject matter experts is exactly the sort of issue our client intended to blow the whistle on to begin with. Yesterday at the White House press briefing, not a single question was asked about a credible IRS whistleblower and their team being removed from a fraud case against the president's son by the president's administration. Nobody asked the question. Nobody. It's amazing. And this is the softest allegation the Bidens face, the only one that doesn't implicate the president's foreign dealings. By our count, there are 5 whistleblowers alleging Biden family corruption right now. 5 different stories that would be exploding and opening voters' eyes to the president that they elected. 5 stories that would hurt his chances for re-election dramatically if only this country had a free, fair, and honest press. Just imagine this story with a Republican in the White House. In addition to the IRS whistleblower, former U.S. Attorney Bud Cummins brought allegations that the Bidens took money from Burisma in Ukraine for help in getting the heat of a corruption investigation off the company's back. Soon after, Biden dangled $1 billion over the president of Ukraine's head and got the prosecutor fired who was looking into Burisma, and then he jumped on TV and bragged about it. You've seen that clip many times. Cummins says the FBI has been sitting on these allegations since 2018, and a Ukrainian prosecutor was denied a visa to come to this country to testify about it. They don't want to hear it. A Romanian whistleblower alleges a rich, corrupt oligarch hired Hunter to get him off the hook with his own government, investigating him for a corrupt land deal, a $3 million deal for the help of a crackhead. And soon after, Joe Biden invited the Romanian president to the White House and spoke about corruption in Bucharest while he was vice president. Whistleblower Tony Bobulinski alleges Joe Biden was critical in massive deals for Chinese money after he denied knowing anything about Hunter's deals, millions and millions of dollars. And finally, an FBI whistleblower alleging the Bureau is in possession of a document proving Biden has taken money in exchange for actual policy decisions. The big document, a document the FBI refuses to release. And the director claims he can't talk about.
I can't speak to the specific document. We are committed to working collaboratively with both committees, but we also have to balance sources and methods in ongoing investigations.
Swampy swamp swamp. If you're curious why the FBI seems to sit on evidence of Biden corruption for years, one case since 2018, why investigators and investigations seem to go nowhere on this, just look at the sworn testimony from former CIA Director Michael Morell, the man who pushed so hard to get 51 intelligence officers to swear that the Hunter laptop story was disinformation. Here's a quote from a former CIA director. There were 2 intents. One intent was to share our concern with the American people that the Russians were playing on this issue. And 2, it was to help Vice President Biden. Why? Because I wanted him to win the election. And that's something. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee joins me now. And sir, it's good to have you on. 5 corruption whistleblowers for the president of the first family, all allegedly are credible. We have an IRS employee, we have former U.S. attorneys, a former U.S. attorney, 4 nationals from Ukraine's government, a Romanian. It seems very clear what's happening here.
Rob, I can remember when Democrats loved whistleblowers. They just couldn't get enough of them to come before Congress. And now they don't even know what a whistleblower is. They think they're horn blowers in a marching band of some kind. It's embarrassing for the country. You did a great job of pointing out that it's not just the fact that there are government officials who are stonewalling and politicizing and weaponizing the Justice Department and the entire rule of law. But I think you did a great job of reminding people that one of the reasons that this continues to happen is because the press have simply turned the other way. They couldn't care less that there's this level of corruption going on. And I think both of us certainly remember a time when there would be enough curiosity and cynicism in the press, regardless of who's in office, regardless of Democrat or Republican, that some young, ambitious reporter would say, my gosh, I could get a Pulitzer for this. Now we know that you can get a Pulitzer for lying. That's what the Washington Post and New York Times did. They got Pulitzer prizes for lying, for absolutely making up a story based on 100% lies that Hillary Clinton cooked up in her kitchen of doom. And I guarantee you, it's the only thing that Hillary Clinton has ever cooked in her life, is the crazy nonsense that led to the phony dossier and the investigation and the false narrative that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, which we now know he most certainly did not.
And when you talk about, I think the most brilliant thing that establishment Washington did was to bring the media, which as somebody that's been in the media for over 15 years now, I know who these people are. It's a very insecure group of, dorks from high school that just want to be in the club. And when establishment Washington brought them into the club, they immediately, they're pawns for them so quickly. You see them at these parties. They have, Biden's coming to the big event and this and that. They're all in the same group now. So how do you report and how do you hold to account the people that have, it's like the cool kids embraced you. Like, you don't want to go tattletale on the cool kids now because now you're in the club.
Yeah, I think that that's a good assessment. And, if you can't sit at the cool kids' table, you're going to be labeled a nerd. These kids grew up as nerds. They're still nerds, but they now pretend that they're cool kids. And as long as they get invited over to the Georgetown cocktail parties where they can nibble cheese and sip wine, they're just as happy as they can be. And their integrity just simply doesn't matter. Right. They like being on the inside, and they are. But what they're doing is really fulfilling what Donald Trump said about them. It sounded outrageous at the time when he said the press has become the enemy of the people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But the press is the enemy of the people when they don't tell the truth about what's happening in the country, regardless of who it makes look good and who it makes it look bad. Yeah. We just need the truth. Let the people decide from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Exactly. And they embolden the worst actors when they don't hold to account government, because not all the government is bad, but the worst actors get so much worse when they realize they can, and that's exactly what's happening. Former Governor Huckabee, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it. Good to see you, sir. All right, Senator Ron Johnson joins me now with more on this. Sir, good to have you back. What everybody wants to know, we look at all this. We've got all these whistleblowers. Does this go anywhere? Are these allegations criminal? Will they be prosecuted, or does this just disappear like it so often does?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Rob, we just got the John Durham report.
It
confirms basically what we already knew, but it's only looking at the Russian collusion hoax. Go back in time when Obama weaponized the IRS with Lois Lerner against Tea Party groups. Then take a look at how the IRS corruptly edited James Comey's exoneration email and they let Hillary Clinton off the hook. And that same cast of characters that edited that exoneration email, that was the Crossfire Hurricane team. Now fast forward to the first impeachment, where we still haven't tracked down the whistleblower, the collusion between the whistleblower and the House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Adam Schiff. Then fast forward to the 2020 election. And how about in 2020 when Senator Grassley and I were investigating Hunter Biden, and all the media was accusing us of soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation. We know in August of 2020 through whistleblower that the FBI developed a scheme to downplay the derogatory information on Hunter Biden. That same month, we got an unsolicited briefing by the FBI. We still don't know who directed that briefing, even though we've asked in 3 public letters.
Right.
But again, we were targets for Russian disinformation. They leaked that briefing to smear us. But also they did it to preempt any disclosure of the laptop. Yeah. So when the laptop became public, then the intelligence officials, they kicked into high gear, led by Anthony Blinken, our current Secretary of State, who lied to my investigators in December 2020 when he said, I never emailed Hunter Biden, but he did. We have the email. So this is a long continuation of corruption within the Democrat Party, within federal law enforcement agencies, the FBI, Department of Justice, the Intel Committee, and of course the complicit and corrupt media.
Do you think that if the Republican Party had been this whole time, throwing up candidates like Mitt Romney, if the Republican Party was still establishment, would we have these problems? Or would we not? Or would this system function better if everybody was still on the establishment team and it was still kind of the elites in the government kind of above all of us?
No, but this would be hidden. I could not get votes to subpoena the Bidens in 2020. It was too political. So I didn't have the support in my own committee or the conference to really dig deep. But again, it was also during COVID, it was hard to investigate this.
Yeah.
But, again, Democrats have no problem in completely politicizing investigations, making things up.
Yeah.
We're constrained by the establishment Republicans from even digging deep. But now we got, the House with the majority. Jim Jordan's doing a great job. James Comer's doing a good job. They're building on what Senator Grassley and I got. But we laid this all out. It was all there.
Do you imagine, I mean, when you see a government that's this politically charged, I wonder, what do you think they're going to do with 87,000 IRS agents if the government is this clearly political and partisan left?
Well, if you're a conservative, they're coming after you. That's what they're going to do with this.
That's terrifying. And it makes you wonder how many audits are coming for some of the louder voices that talk
so,
about
Rob, I also had to point out, yesterday in front of Finance Committee, we had the former chief of the criminal division of the IRS, and I asked him, have you ever seen in your career an entire IRS investigatory team taken off a case? I had no idea. Could have said, oh, it's really common. No. In 30 years at the IRS, that never happened one time. That's corruption.
That is corruption. Tomorrow, you've got 3 FBI whistleblowers that are going to testify in front of the Weaponization Committee in the House about how they were ordered to prioritize domestic extremism over actual atrocities like human trafficking and the other terrible things that they should have been focused on. Obviously, there's a major push right now from establishment Washington to create this idea that conservatives are white supremacists, that we're a danger to democracy, and you're going to hear some testimony tomorrow. What are you looking for?
Well, what's interesting is when I was chairman of Homeland Security, that was back in 2019, 2020, my ranking member, Gary Peters, whenever we have our threat hearing, I'm concerned about cyber attacks, and he was always concerned about terrorist attacks by white supremacists. And I go, what are you talking about? We're all opposed to white supremacists. I don't see this as a major movement, as a major threat. No. But so they've been laying the groundwork for whipping up people's concern in America against the dangers of white supremacists. It's just bizarre, but they're continuing on that path, and again, they get a big assist by the corrupt and complicit media.
It's despicable to watch, and the desperation for power. Everything is about power. They're doing this. It's gonna end in some kind of power grab, censorship, whatever you want to call it, and it'll end politically better for them to push this nonsense. We all know that. Senator Johnson, we're looking forward to the House hearing tomorrow. I know you'll be watching. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Have a good evening.
All right, coming up, what should happen versus what will happen to repugnant liars like Adam Schiff in the wake of the Durham report. KT McFarland and Jason Miller join us coming up next.
Heroes. Real conflict. Yeah, I think it is still a very real possibility, Tom. There are a number of Republicans, many of them from New York, who have joined the chorus of Democrats telling George Santos that it's time to resign. Now, those same Republicans also believe that it shouldn't be Congress that necessarily expels him without that due process part of it that comes through the Ethics Committee investigation. So that's why they're asking for this process to play itself out. But if the Ethics Committee is able to uncover or deliver enough hard evidence that shows that he is responsible or guilty of many of the things that he's been accused of, it's very possible that Republicans will join Democrats. He needs 2/3 of the House to vote to expel him. So that is very possible. The question I have, Tom, is does it not come until we're closer to the next election and where Republicans have found a candidate that could win a race in his district, which is a very close district? That may be the calculation for Republicans right now. So this is still a very real possibility. It's just not going to happen immediately.
Yeah, more than a year away, though. That's a long time. Okay, Ryan, we appreciate that. Thank you for all of it. Now to the ongoing battle over abortion. A federal appeals court hearing arguments on limiting access nationwide to a widely used abortion pill. A fight ultimately heading back to the Supreme Court, while some states restrict abortion further. Here's Laura Jarrett.
Tonight, the most commonly used abortion pill still on the market, but its legal future uncertain. A federal appeals court appearing deeply skeptical today of arguments from the Biden administration and pill manufacturer as they try to keep mifepristone available.
I don't understand this thing. The FDA can do no wrong. We are allowed to look at the FDA just like we're allowed to look at any agency.
The three-judge panel must decide what to do with that controversial decision out of Texas last month, which invalidated the FDA's longtime approval of the drug. One judge hearing the case appointed by George W. Bush, the other two by Donald Trump. All have a history of supporting abortion restrictions. Judge James Ho calling abortion a moral tragedy in a 2018 case. The stakes of what happens to a pill women can currently get in the mail even higher now with new abortion restrictions emerging at the state level.
We needed to take action to protect the unborn.
Overnight in North Carolina, a GOP supermajority banned most abortions after 12 weeks with few exceptions, overriding the governor's veto.
The law is incredibly arbitrary, and it was crafted by people who are not physicians. It's really important to note that when there's a list of exceptions, someone is always left out.
North Carolina had been an outlier among a sea of states that restricted access after the Supreme Court decided women don't have a constitutional right to an abortion.
Every pregnancy threatens the life of mothers.
In neighboring South Carolina, a 6-week ban, like Florida's, on the horizon.
Okay, Laura Jarrett joins us now live in studio. So, Laura, I guess my first question, I want to go back to that abortion pill. What's your sense of those judges and the ruling on the FDA pill and the most widely used abortion pill? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, this pill is in real trouble. It's clear from the questioning today, over about 2 hours, the Biden administration, the pill manufacturer who want to keep the drug on the market, pepper, time and again by all of these judges, all three of the judges. We'll see exactly how they frame the opinion. And remember, even no matter what they do, this is going back up to the Supreme Court, but it matters because it will just affect how the Supreme Court actually views the case, views the issues. Essentially, they tee it up for the Supreme Court. But as of right now, pill stays on the market. It's all just going back to the Supreme Court.
And then back to North Carolina. North Carolina is not the only state we're tracking, right? We're also talking about Nebraska, and something may happen there as well.
Yeah, Nebraska actually wanted a 6-week ban, I believe, but they didn't get it. And so now it looks like a 12-week ban is where they're headed. That seems to be, the new course of action for obviously North Carolina and Nebraska. South Carolina tried the 6-week ban. The line keeps creeping further and further. Remember, many women don't know they're pregnant until much, much later. But again, this is what happens after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade.
Yeah. Okay, Laura Jarrett, who's been very busy the past couple of weeks. Laura, we always appreciate it. Thank you. We do want to head overseas now to Italy and the deadly flooding that has devastated the northern part of the country. The images are wild. Torrential rain submerging entire communities and forcing thousands more to evacuate. Ali Aruzzi has this one for us.
Tonight, northern Italy in a deadly disaster. Record flooding killing at least 8 people, with fears that number could rise with more missing. Firefighters now desperately trying to rescue survivors, using helicopters to pull stranded residents to safety. Torrential rains in the Emilia-Romagna region causing all the rivers in the area to overflow, flooding 23 cities. The catastrophic conditions triggering the evacuation of more than 5,000 people. Entire bridges have been washed away as rushing waters wreak havoc on the infrastructure, destroying homes and submerging thousands of acres of farmland. Officials say some parts of the region received half of their average annual rainfall in just 36 hours. The intense flooding even leading to the cancellation of the highly anticipated Formula One Grand Prix, set to take place in the area this weekend. This food and beverage service worker saying that, unfortunately, the situation has changed dramatically. It's a critical situation, and it's been decided to postpone the Grand Prix until a later date. Northern Italy becoming all too familiar with weather extremes, swinging from drought to deluge. The Italian government now sounding the alarm as the country deals with the devastating effects of climate change.
In Emilia-Romagna,
Italy's civil protection minister saying what happened in Emilia-Romagna had already happened with different effects in Ischia and could happen anywhere else in the country. With more rain expected to batter the area, authorities warn residents it's not over, urging people to get to higher ground amid fears the rain-swollen rivers could burst their banks again. And Tom, Italy is no stranger to these climate extremes. Last year, Italian authorities declared a state of emergency due to severe drought in the same area that experienced this torrential rain. Now the World Meteorological Organization says that temperatures in Europe increased at more than twice the global average over the past 30 years, the highest increase of any continent. Scientists warn that unless meaningful action is taken to mitigate climate change, Europe will continue to see more intense and frequent weather cycles. Tom?
Okay, Ali Aruzzi for us. Ali, we appreciate it. But back here at home, we want to head to California, where federal prosecutors say an ex-Apple employee took the company's trade secrets back to China. The Chinese national is now believed to be an executive at a self-driving car company based in China. The charge is part of a broader effort at the Department of Justice, where there's growing concern over stolen property information from American companies. Dana Griffin has the details.
Tonight, a former Apple employee charged with stealing trade secrets for self-driving cars, then fleeing to China, and he's still at large. This YouTube video appears to show the man testing a Jidu self-driving vehicle. He's named in the video as the head of autonomous driving at the Chinese electric vehicle company.
Stealing software and hardware source code from U.S. tech companies in order to market it to Chinese competitors.
According to the newly unsealed indictment, 35-year-old Wei Bao Wang was hired by Apple in 2016 and attended secrecy training for the project he was working on. Then, nearly 2 years after gaining access to Apple's highly sensitive materials, he accepted a U.S.-based job with an unnamed Chinese company, but didn't resign from Apple until 4 months later, the indictment says. Baidu, the massive Chinese internet company that owns Jidu, did not respond to our request for comment. According to the indictment, law enforcement executed a search warrant at Wang's Mountain View, California home in June of 2018.
Among the materials discovered from the devices in Wang's home was the source code for Apple's entire autonomous systems project as it existed around the time that Wang left Apple.
Open the door, FBI, open up. If you don't open up the door, we will.
This Bay Area family remembers that day Wang's home was raided.
So we ran to the peephole, and I could see all the way up these stairs, just FBI agents on full gear.
Wang was home during the raid, according to the indictment, but managed to board a one-way flight from San Francisco to China later that same night. The DOJ did not comment on Wang's current location, but confirmed he is not in custody.
You'll never be able to stop this kind of thing from happening 100%. Even with Big Brother, you know, with all kind of keylogging software, even a photo can get around keylogging software. If I took a picture of some source code, that is not typing anything into my keyboard. There's always a workaround.
Wang's indictment is just one of 5 announced Tuesday by the DOJ's newly formed Disruptive Technology Task Force.
We stand vigilant in enforcing U.S. laws to stop the flow of sensitive technologies to our foreign adversaries.
Apple has not responded to NBC's request for comment. U.S. companies now on high alert as the government fights an emerging threat.
All right, Dana Griffin joins us now live from Los Angeles. Dana, great to see you tonight. The only way the U.S. or Apple will get justice here, right, is with the help of China. What are the chances China will actually help out in this case?
Well, Tom, according to our legal experts, it's very unlikely. Now, there is no extradition treaty with China, so unless China has some political gain to turn him over, they probably won't. And this issue is bigger than Wang. There are other former Apple employees from China accused of stealing trade secrets. One pleaded guilty in August. Another is also facing charges, but a trial date for his case has yet to be set. If convicted, Wang faces up to 10 years in prison for each trade secret violation. Tom?
All right, Dana Griffin for us. Dana, we appreciate all of that. Still ahead tonight, the small plane crash in Florida. A banner plane, you see them all the time there in Florida, going down near a Target parking lot. Look what happened. It burst into flames. What we've just learned about the plane company involved. Plus, slingshot savior. This is an incredible story you're going to love. A 13-year-old brother witnessing a kidnapping attempt on his younger sister, how he used his slingshot to stop the crime. You'll hear directly from him. And Taco Wars, the new legal battle over the phrase Taco Tuesday. Yes, it's going to court. Can you believe that? We'll explain. Stay with us. Top story just getting started on this Wednesday.
holding signs and protesting the upcoming G7 summit. The group of 7 leaders from the world's richest democracies are scheduled to meet over the weekend in the Japanese city. Topics will include Russia's invasion of Ukraine and China's threat to global supply chains and economic security. The G7 countries are the United States, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, and Italy. President Biden is leaving today, as we know, to head there for the summit. Let's bring you up to speed here with Fox's Jackie Heinrich here with this report.
Bound for Japan, President Biden says his 3 deputies won't waste a minute on spending talks with House Republicans as the deadline to raise the debt ceiling approaches.
They met last night. They're going to be meeting again today, and I'll be in constant contact with my team while I'm at the G7.
While Senate Republicans praised Biden's call to streamline talks,
I'm glad the president has taken the advice I gave him back in February.
Congressional Democrats punted from the negotiating table, now voicing concern Biden won't uphold their interests, especially over proposed work requirements for some welfare programs.
Yeah, work requirements, so-called work requirements, are a non-starter.
Well, I voted years ago for the work requirements that exist. But it's possible there could be a few others, but not anything of any consequence.
Biden's reassurance laughed off by McCarthy.
I don't understand anything that has consequence. This is a senator who voted for work requirements. If he doesn't want to have something that has consequences, he wants to borrow more money from China to pay an able-bodied person who has no dependents, not even to look for a job, not even go to school for 20 hours.
Was not charged after killing a thief who attacked him while robbing a drugstore in San Francisco.
By a grand jury. The indictment includes 4 counts of murder in the first degree and 1 count of burglary. If found guilty, he could be sentenced to death. Kohberger has yet to enter a plea, but his previous attorney said he believes he'll be exonerated. The indictment follows his December arrest at his family home in Pennsylvania. More than 45 days after Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found brutally murdered in this college house. According to court documents, Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath at the crime scene, and his white Hyundai Elantra seen driving here during a routine traffic stop was also allegedly caught on camera in the area the night of the killings. One of 2 surviving roommates telling police she saw a male figure with bushy eyebrows, a mask, and black clothing in the home that night.
So this grand jury indictment simplifies the process for the surviving witnesses.
Absolutely, because they don't have to testify in front of Kohberger during this preliminary proceeding.
News of the indictment is the latest twist in a grisly case that's left a small university community heartbroken. Last weekend, Kaylee and Maddie both received posthumous degrees. Kohberger will be arraigned on Monday. Legal experts say once he enters a plea, the trial must begin within 6 months, unless he waives his right to a speedy trial. Tom?
Aaron McLaughlin for us tonight. Aaron, we appreciate that. We want to switch gears now to an incredible and somewhat uplifting story. A 13-year-old shares how he saved his 8-year-old sister using a slingshot to fend off a would-be kidnapper. NBC's Stephen Romo spoke to the family about the boy's quick-thinking action.
Tonight, a 13-year-old boy being hailed a hero after police say he saved his little sister from a kidnapping using a slingshot.
So I was in my room, right, playing games like all other teenage boys do, and I hear my sister scream.
Owen Burns tells us he looked out his window only to see his 8-year-old sister being grabbed by a stranger. He knew he had to act fast.
I had 2 things I shot him with, head and chest. Head was the marble, the chest was the rock.
Through the window, making the shot twice from about 200 feet away, according to his mother.
Seems like you're a pretty good shot. Do you practice a lot with your slingshot?
No, not the slightest.
What was going through your mind when this happened, when you saw this guy coming to your sister?
I was mad, so I got outside, was my baseball bat.
Police say the little girl had been playing in her backyard when the man appeared.
The suspect had come through the woods onto her property and came from behind her, grabbed her like like you'd see in the movies, hand over the mouth, arm around the waist, and was attempting to pull her into the woods.
Police say troopers were able to find the 17-year-old suspect hiding at a nearby gas station, easily identified thanks to Owen.
What he did also helped us to identify who the suspect was, because obviously he had injuries from getting hit with a slingshot, and those were things that helped us evidentiary-wise.
Police sharing with their mother, Margaret, that her son is, in fact, a perfect shot.
I kind of thought he was lying. But then when the police finally confirmed it and said that he did hit him twice and he did make both shots, I was quite impressed.
He really is the one that that I believe saved his sister's either life or from something seriously bad happening to her.
Now the Burns family healing from the traumatic event, one that could have ended much differently.
I'm just happy we were able to celebrate her 8th birthday that Saturday after. I mean, we could have been celebrating a funeral or something else.
And Owen has some advice for parents.
You always want to tell them, if you have 13-year-old, better buy them a slingshot.
All right, definitely advice from a 13-year-old. Stephen Romo joins us now live in studio. When you hear that mother's chilling words, it sort of brings everything into perspective, because it's a different type of story. What do we know about this suspect?
Yeah, the suspect actually just 17 years old. We know that he will be tried as an adult. His bond was set at $150,000 at his arraignment last week, with 3 charges, one for attempted kidnapping, one for attempted assault, and one for assault and battery. Meanwhile, that mom we heard from in that story was so terrified at the time she raced home, now says this little girl just wants to move on and forget about it. But it kind of sounds like this young man may have some endorsement deals with slingshots coming up in his future, trying to get other parents to buy them out there.
That or enter some kind of competition. So, all right, Stephen Romo, we thank you for that. When we come back, cops miss robbers. This is crazy. Surveillance video showing a couple of thieves ransacking a clothing store. The moment not one, but 2 police cars drove by without noticing the crime in progress. And late-breaking news on TikTok. Which U.S. state just became the first to ban the popular social media app? That's right, TikTok banned completely in one state. We'll tell you.
In the South Pacific, the United States still cares about them, and they matter geopolitically to the U.S. There's growing concern that China especially is trying to expand its naval assets to those countries, is building roads and bridges through its infrastructure program in that part of the world, and then sending military assistance as well, and in some cases bolstering what are essentially autocracies, which is exactly what President Biden doesn't want to happen. So it's likely the Secretary of State will make that visit to Papua New Guinea, but Australia won't get a visit from either the President or the Secretary of State. What they will get instead is a full state visit at some point later this year, which is a decent consolation prize.
Ed, on the G7 and China, how unified are the member nations of the G7 when it comes to this U.S. effort to counter China?
I think the next few days are going to give us a hint of that. And it was notable that the National Security Advisor, in a pregame briefing for reporters on the way over on Air Force One today, was reinforcing that every one of those 7 has their own unique relationship with China and needs to do something to sustain it. But what they hope the summit will demonstrate is that on certain key issues, economic, national security, or military, there will be some statement of resolve by these big economies that while they understand China needs to exist, China's going to have to play by rules that are a little more amenable and friendly to everybody else. So watch for things regarding, trade. Watch for potential threats of sanctions if China does too much to help with Russia, but also watch potentially for some areas of agreement. China will be closely watching this, is probably pleased the president isn't making it to Australia, but understands that the 7 economies meeting in Japan is a signal that they take them pretty seriously and are working together against them.
Ed O'Keefe in Washington. Thanks so much, Ed.
Take care.
And Japan is taking steps to counter China. It has already committed to doubling its defense budget, a major departure from more than 75 years of foreign policy after World War II. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has more from Tokyo.
Japan's military has its sights set on becoming a formidable fighting force. But to get there, it will have to overhaul its pacifist self-image. Japan's constitution was written by American occupation authorities after World War II, and it set out to make sure the country never went to war again. So it actually bans Japan from settling international disputes by force. But China's aggression has changed everything. Last August, it fired 5 missiles that landed in Japanese waters. And in December, China sailed its aircraft carrier between 2 of Japan's southern islands. As a result, there's broad support these days for a more muscular military. Naroshiga Michishita is a professor of defense policy in Tokyo.
It could have been much more controversial had it not been for China's massive military buildup, its coercive and sometimes even aggressive actions that it's taking in the South China Sea.
Japan hosted a defense and security show this spring, which attracted manufacturers of every kind of military equipment, from reconnaissance robots to aircraft. Ron Trifus headed the Israeli delegation.
For us, it is a market with a great potential.
He's talking about Japan's radical plans to double its defense budget.
This is a major change, and this exhibition here now, I think, reflects the change.
It's going to give Japan the 3rd biggest defense budget in the world. And billions will flow to U.S. companies for weapons like Tomahawk missiles and F-35 fighter planes.
Now people understand how serious it is that this potentially controversial shift in Japan's defense policy has so far been largely accepted by the Japanese public.
But it is a huge cultural shift. Until now, the Defense Forces, that's the military's official name, has been better known for search and rescue services than combat. Even action-packed videos like this aren't convincing young Japanese to enlist in droves. In fact, the most recent recruiting drive for 10,000 new service members missed the target by half. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Tokyo.
A spokesman for Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle, says the couple was involved in a, quote, near catastrophic car chase with paparazzi in New York City Tuesday night. Nobody was hurt or arrested, but as Errol Barnett reports, some have compared the incident to the fatal crash of Harry's mother, Princess Diana, in Paris in 1997.
In Midtown Manhattan last night, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped out to cheers and stepped into apparent danger after a spokesperson says the royal couple were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex accuse highly aggressive paparazzi of relentlessly pursuing them, at times driving on sidewalks in an incident lasting more than 2 hours.
I would find it hard to believe that there was a 2-hour high-speed chase. I don't think there's many of us who don't recall how his mom died, and it would be horrific to lose an innocent bystander during a chase like this.
Law enforcement sources tell CBS News after leaving the event around 10 p.m., the couple did not want the paparazzi to know where they were staying, so they circled Midtown for more than an hour with NYPD squad cars providing crowd control. Police say while Harry and Meghan were not in danger, 2 uniformed officers could have been injured during the incident. At one point, the couple jumped into the back of Suk Chong Singh's yellow cab outside the 19th precinct, but he only drove them around for about 10 to 15 minutes.
They were following us the whole time. You know, there was nothing reckless or anything like that, but they were following us.
The couple finally arrived at the police station where they were able to switch cars and get home safely.
Do you have that pap on the scooter again?
Yes, ma'am.
In their Netflix docuseries, they spoke about being hounded by the paparazzi. Harry recalls losing his own mother, Princess Diana, who died in a fatal collision back in 1997 after the car she was being driven in tried to outrun the paparazzi in Paris.
But I knew that I had to do everything I could to protect my family. You know, I didn't want history to repeat itself.
Now, back in Montecito, California, where Harry and Meghan live full-time, there was an arrest this week at their home. Sources tell CBS News their security detail detained an alleged stalker before he was arrested by local police. John?
Errol Barnett, thank you. Some of the books being banned from school library shelves are about to get their day in court. We'll examine the legal battle brewing between writers, a major publisher, and a Florida school district. Here's streaming CBS News Primetime.
It's a history-making meeting. 4 extraordinary women who are all 4-star generals and admirals.
How did you deal with being discriminated against?
I just worked harder. The future of an ever-evolving U.S. military when we go person to person.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Migrants into schools while kids are there learning?
I think they're going to pull off it at the last minute. I think it was done without any ounce of common sense or rational thought behind it. By the way, the left is always talking about how they love to see diversity. Look at the diversity in those crowds of those people protesting what's going to happen at their kids' school. It is remarkable to see New Yorkers of all stripes and colors protesting this sort of asinine plan. But I think we are running out of room. We have 42,000 people in our custody, and every option is on the table. Unfortunately, some of the sillier ones are schools, and even Rikers Island. I was in that Otis Bantam Correctional Facility last year, and I stood in about 2 inches of water as inmates stood around me. So this is not exactly a facility that's fit for even inmates or anyone at this point.
It's just amazing, just absolutely amazing to see how illogical government can be in so many different fashions. Joe Borelli, city councilman in New York, one of the only sensible ones we have. Good to see you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, Democrats and some Republicans are trying to boot George Santos from Congress. Mike Carter asked New Yorkers to weigh in.
Time may be running out on freshman GOP Rep. George Santos's brief political career, with Democrats and even some Republicans now pushing to expel Santos from Congress.
I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep fighting for what I believe in. I'm going to keep fighting to represent my district.
Today, we're in Santos's home district on Long Island, asking Santos voters how they feel about their embattled congressman.
If it's true that he did all that, what word should I use, fabrication on his application, he should step down.
There's a lot of people that lie in this world, but, you know, what are you going to do?
Is it time for George Santos to resign?
Yes. Past time. Should have resigned a long time ago.
My concern is losing that seat. If we encourage him to resign, what about the other side? They don't do anything about their people who do wrong, and that really bothers me.
You're a Republican voter. Mm-hmm. Would you vote for a Republican in the future, or has George Santos's lying, has this dissuaded you from voting Republican?
No, not at all, but I do not like liars.
If I can have a guarantee that the person who's going to succeed him is Republican, I have no problem. We have a slim majority. We cannot afford that.
I think that a lot of people aren't thinking critically. They're just kind of following along party lines.
Maybe just give him another chance, I guess.
If you're willing to give George another chance?
Yes, I will, because I don't want any Democrats in at all. I want Republicans.
It's the people that voted for him. It's 200,000 people that voted for him. I don't get it.
Do you worry they might vote for him again?
Some will.
If he does run again, would you vote for him?
Yes, I'll vote for him. Yeah, I'll give him another chance. All right? I give a lot of chances.
In New York, for NEWSMAX, I'm Mike Carter.
Good stuff from Mike Carter, as always. Just today, the House voted 221 to 204 to send a resolution to expel Santos to the Ethics Committee. We'll see. Coming up in news from the left, what keeps Obama up at night? Us.
Do you think...
There's a lot that's been going on with this case. We've constantly been bringing in legal analysts to break it all down for us. Well, Live Now's Mike Page spoke with an attorney on this, what this means moving forward for this case. Let's listen.
Live Now from Fox continues with the very latest here in the Brian Kohberger case here, where today indicted by a grand jury. He will be appearing in court on Monday. This is the suspect in the murder of 4 University of Idaho students, has now been indicted by an Idaho grand jury, and a preliminary hearing has been canceled. So to get the very latest on this case here that, of course, made headlines and will continue to do so, let's go and joined in by a friend here of Live Now from Fox, Ken Belkin, legal analyst. Thank you again for being here with us. First thoughts when you heard about the grand jury indictment?
First thoughts were, duh, this didn't happen already, because of course he was getting indicted. You know, there's an old saying, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich, and there's a lot more evidence of murder here than in a ham sandwich case. So no secret he was getting indicted, in my opinion.
Yeah, so true there when we talk about just how easy it is for those grand jury indictments. But going forward here now, we were looking forward to seeing Brian Kohberger at the end of June there. Now that has been canceled. So for our audience there and for those that follow the case here, what are these next steps now that we know he'll be appearing on Monday?
So on Monday, he's going to appear for an arraignment on the indictment. There's going to be a formal reading of the charges that were indicted against him, an opportunity for him to enter a plea, which we all know is going to be not guilty, and for the case to be basically put over for discovery and trial purposes.
Okay, all right, good to know right there. And how long is this expected? I mean, these are pretty short here. How long is it expected to go there on Monday?
Pretty sure. An arraignment shouldn't last more than like 15 minutes, 30 minutes at the longest. It's just going to be, you know, a formal reading of the charges. He'll enter a plea of not guilty. The judge will set probably a motion schedule for his defense attorneys to file motions regarding various legal issues around, you know, probable cause. They're going to look to move to suppress physical evidence, such as the knife sheath. They're going to look to suppress any statements he may have made after being taken into custody, and maybe how he was identified. They might look to suppress that. And those things will be litigated, and eventually there'll be hearings on those issues. There will be decisions and of what is going to be allowed to be put in front of the jury in this case, and his case will move to trial, it looks like. Doesn't look like they're going to reach a negotiated disposition. He's very adamant that he's going to be vindicated.
And Ken, this is such a case there, and really a story that has really captured the attention of the nation, really around the world, and really, you know, you could pretty much bet on it that it'll be some sort of, you know, Netflix documentary or some sort of documentary here in the future. But when you have something, a high-profile case like this, and it'll soon go to trial, I mean, how do you even find a jury here that hasn't heard something about this and that doesn't have an opinion on the case so far?
Yeah, that's true. The question of how he gets a fair trial, given the amount of publicity on his case, is a good question. And look, there's a voir dire process. The defense is going to be permitted to voir dire people, the prosecution.
This country keeps you up at night. The thing that I'm most worried about is the degree to which we now have a divided conversation, in part because we have a divided media. When I was coming up, you had 3 TV stations. If something happens, in the past, everybody could say, all right, we may disagree on how to solve it, but at least we all agree that, yeah, that's an issue. Now, people will say, well, that didn't happen, or I don't believe that.
Oh, you mean you don't control the entire media anymore? It's not all just Your perfect little echo chamber? How appalling. How can you sleep in Martha's Vineyard with such an atrocity happening to the American people? Live in fear of NEWSMAX, Mr. Obama. We are here to obstruct your insidious agenda from destroying this great country, no matter how much that frightens you. Up next, Fox still reeling after the Tucker firing, ratings still way down. It's now being reported by Variety that on April 26th, Tucker Carlson spoke by phone with one of Fox's 8 board members who told the host his recent benching was a condition of Fox's settlement with Dominion Voting Systems, a spoken agreement. Dominion has denied this claim. Now, perhaps this is Fox trying to shift the blame for what they've done. It's been a very unpopular move. Who knows? But in order to stop the hemorrhaging, Fox is reportedly planning a lineup change. Drudge reporting today, an insider calling it their boldest and most fearless lineup ever is coming. It's going to have Hannity at 8 o'clock in the Tucker spot, and then they're going to move some other things around. Bold and fearless. I thought those were bizarre words for a company that fired the #1 conservative voice out of their fear of cancel culture and NewsGuard and the Global Disinformation Index. But whatever. Many former Fox viewers are now switching over to NEWSMAX, and we welcomed them last night. If you can believe it, this show beat CNN at 7 o'clock. CNN's Aaron Burnett out front. 579,000 of you tuned in last night. We've been creeping up, and now we're taking down prime time on CNN. Eric Bolling, who comes on here in just a few minutes, also beat Anderson Cooper at 8 p.m., pulling 510,000 viewers to Anderson's 496. And keep in mind, by the way, that this was actually a slaughter by NEWSMAX because we are on in 20 million less homes than CNN, and we still topped their numbers at 7 and 8 o'clock. That's amazing. Coming up, even Medal of Valor recipients have had it with Joe Biden.